Yeah, probably wondering why I'm fighting a fat king or emperor penguin instead of, the darkness of darkness. Well, Skyward Sword was predictably taking too long to beat and review, so I kind of figured this may happen since I'm not familiar with Skyward Sword. I figured I'd take a small amount of time and get one of my easier games off my list first. And here we are. When looking at a quick and easy on my to-do list for Season 3, Kirby's Dream Land rose quickly to the top of that list. So, Kirby's development is full of interesting things to talk about. Probably the most interesting thing in my opinion is the box art. Here in the States, it has Kirby as being completely white. Sakurai and Miyamoto, the creator of Kirby and a big name in Nintendo respectively, couldn't decide on a color. Sakurai wanted pink, while Miyamoto wanted yellow. The debate went on so long, Nintendo of America made the choice that because Kirby looks white on the Game Boy screen, to just color him in that way until later. Also, in case it wasn't obvious, pink won out, with yellow often being a secondary color in multiplayer games with Kirby in it. As for me, I never actually owned a Game Boy. So I didn't play this game until it was released on the Wii for the collection that came with Kirby's Anniversary. Actually, because of this collection, I ended up playing this game twice. Once for the heck of it, and once for a Let's Play that lasted a little over a half hour. It was perfect since I had need for a game that was short, sweet, and, to the point. I needed something that didn't take too long from distracting me from Skyward Sword. It's a win-win playing this here. So let's get this started. Let's beat up the only character I know Sakurai actually voices in Smash Brothers. Let's take on King Dedede! So before we begin, let me tell you that this game is absolutely super short. By the time I'm done talking about this, hypothetically you have already beaten the game, it's so short. So, you have to imagine the story is pretty simple too. King Dedede, being more big than Bird, steals all the food from the people of Dreamland. So Kirby needs to go save the day. But this does bring up a lot of questions, like what is Dedede a king of? Aren't these his people? Is he just being a butt? It's hard to say. For a game that is built as baby's first platformer though, it's nice to see something original. You're not saving a princess or a land, you're saving food. How appropriate for Kirby, anyway. While the concept is incredibly simple being the word of the day, it's still cute and fun, just like Kirby himself. So, speaking of Kirby, he was designed in a very interesting way. Sakurai drew a ball as a placeholder and eventually liked the design so much that he kept Kirby in as the main character, as a little ball. Kirby is super easy to draw, which is probably part of the reason. With that, Kirby is given a very simple personality. Wait, did you see what I say there? Personality. Kirby, despite being on an 8-bit portable console, is given personality. He dances and does goofy things between each level. It's cute and brings a lot of charm to the game. King Dedede makes faces as well, and so does Wispy Woods. This is great. This game absolutely has charm and plenty of personality. And this is honestly fantastic for a Game Boy game. All the characters are cute and cuddly, silly, or spooky. For a first time seeing classic characters, this is a fantastic startup. However, there are two boss fights we don't see too often after this. While we see Kracko again for sure, Lololo and Lalala, despite them looking like they're from Clu Clu Land, doesn't seem to resurface too often, not counting the anime. This blimp boss doesn't show up much either. Still, the entire game is super charming, and the great characters, even if the characters don't have dialogue, are fantastic. They're so well designed, it's ridiculous. But moving right along, does the gameplay match up with all of this cute and charming design? So, talking about the gameplay, we're going to keep the word simple around a lot. Kirby jumps. He can inhale enemies. He spits them out as projectiles. He can fly. That's about it. If you're thinking he's going to use the powers of his devoured foes, you're actually quite wrong. Kirby didn't gain the power until his second game, Kirby's Adventure. No, instead Kirby just inhales his foes and uses them like ammo, or he can eat them to get rid of them. He can kinda hop on enemies' heads too, which is useful for when you're falling down long drops. When you are flying, you can't inhale victims, but you can let out a burst of air as an attack. There are some super hot curry type items as well. They function mostly as power-ups. Yeah, that curry stuff in Smash Brothers isn't just randomly there. It's actually from Kirby's Dream Land. Kirby spits fire when he eats these and basically becomes a machine gun. He does that when flying as well, including a boss fight. Yeah. Luckily for that instance, the power-up doesn't run out until the boss fight is over. It's simple to think you can actually fly over pretty much everything. I mean, what kind of character can just straight up fly whenever he wants to? But keep in mind, the levels are actually designed around this concept. You know, speaking of levels, for a Game Boy game, these levels look great. They all look unique and distinct, so if the good music doesn't clue you into which level you're on, the settings probably will. Each location is pretty unique, and the enemies at each location are pretty nice too. They do kind of change up with where you're at. You also gradually meet new threats that do different things versus previous enemies. Again, none of this is too difficult for a seasoned gamer, but the game does go up in difficulty the further you go in. It has a nice and gentle difficulty curve, to say the least. The boss fights are fun to fight. Basically, you have Wispy Woods, who you dodge until you can shoot apples at them, Lololo and Lalala, who push blocks at you, and you need to defeat them using their blocks, so basically you need to kind of grab the block and then jump back up, or grab the block, shoot it at them, and then dodge them, because if not, you're taking damage. Kabula, the blimp, throws you into a bullet hell. Kracko is slightly unpredictable and drops enemies that you can shoot at him. And finally, King Dedede himself has attacks that briefly drop stars that you can shoot back at him. But you have to be quick and somewhat close to him, or these stars straight up disappear right away. All these boss fights are different, and there are a few mini-bosses to face off with as well. This is all very fun to beat and makes each level pretty memorable. So you're probably thinking by this point in time, Sauron, the game is totally short! Yeah, that's not good! It's totally easy too, what the heck? Well, there is a secret that kind of mitigates this quite a bit. It has one secret to it. When you beat the game, you get a cheat code for hard mode. I haven't gotten into hard mode all that much, but I hear the enemies are stronger and faster, and you only get 3 points of life. Don't like easy games? If you ever get this game, just try out hard mode. While not my thing, I'm sure plenty of Kirby fans absolutely love this. Speaking of love, I actually kinda love this game. If I were to rate this game, I'd say it is pretty great. Not super fantastic or near perfect, but pretty decent nonetheless. It is a charming, easy to come into game that I think plenty of newcomers would enjoy. I'd probably actually give this game an 8 out of 10 personally. While I love the charm and the levels, the story doesn't hold up to later Kirby games, and the difficulty does kind of hurt it a bit in level design, since there's honestly not that much difficulty to even talk about. And as for there only being a harder mode keeping you coming back, it's certainly not my thing. This game is great for newcomers to platformers, and it is a fantastic portable game. But you know what else is? Mario Land and Mario Land 2. Keep this game portable. On a home console like what I'm playing on, it loses a lot of charm. And I'd still like to point out that while Mario Land and Kirby's Dream Land are both great portable games, in platformers on the Game Boy, Mario Land 2 still reigns king. Other than a huge difficulty spike at the end of the game, it's also great for newcomers and veterans alike, doing everything Kirby's Dream Land does, and more. Maybe the next Kirby game can notch it up a bit more. We will see. Next time, however, my reviews are starting up on Legend of Zelda series with Skyward Sword, which I'd already promised. Oops. Oh well. If you like the video, leave a like, subscribe, comment. All of that really helps the channel grow. Here are a video or two of mine that YouTube seems to think you'd like to see. But as for now, bye-bye. It all ends today. I will seal you. Oh, hi guys. I was just sealing away evil. Yeah, it's Skyward Sword. Completely evil. Okay. It may be obvious by that, but I really don't like Skyward Sword. Not the most original statement of the world, but I can't help it. It is my least favorite Zelda game. That being said, I never claimed the game was bad. I just didn't like it. I've only beat it once, so maybe after all this time I need to give it another chance? That being said, after I played this game, I discovered how good the gameplay was in Red Steel 2. I'd probably be better off reviewing that. Regardless, let's see how this was made. Oh, Miyamoto wanted a heavier motion-controlled game after Twilight Princess. And wait, am I butchering this name? Probably. Aonuma. Yeah, there we go. Aonuma, the project director of Zelda, said no. Later on, he saw Wii Sports Resorts and changed his mind. So this game is heavier on motion controls than even Twilight Princess, the Wii port, was. While some people will hate the game just for this, I can't really blame them. I don't mind motion controls if they're done right. Let me, once again, recommend Red Steel 2, the sequel to a terrible launch Wii game. While the first stunk, the sequel has probably the best motion control sword combat on the Wii to date. And here we have Skyward Sword, a game that, well, I'll get into that in a bit. The true villain here is obviously Demise, this creature that everyone keeps talking about and they're hyping up immediately when the game starts. Girahim even wants to free this beast, so he's definitely the big baddie here. Let's do it! Let's take on Demise! Let's get this over with quickly. I don't like the plot here in Skyward Sword. So I've heard a lot of people defend this plot, but personally I think is literal trash. The stories about how Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf, despite not showing up here, keep coming up in Zelda games and how the Master Sword was built. That sounds great, right? No! You are Link. You live in the sky. On a day about training on birds and becoming a knight, Link graduates into a higher class, only to have his best friend and love interest, Zelda, kidnapped by a tornado. I hate when that happens. Suddenly, while Link is trying to rest, this spirit thing named Fi, I'll just go with Fi, appears and tells Link how to get Zelda back. Link follows Fi to some goddess sword and in the morning leaves to reach the surface, an area below this huge cloud cover. Link literally chases after Zelda for about 3 dungeons, meeting this bad guy trying to revive his master named Demise. The guy's name is Girahim, and he basically sends boss fights after you. Anyway, despite hearing Zelda was captured and whatnot, you rarely actually see her. She is purifying herself, as she is the reincarnation of this goddess who sealed Demise away. After unsuccessfully chasing after Zelda for about 3 dungeons, she goes into the past and going right to days after Demise's defeat to seal him away, or at least strengthen the seal that was put on him. You, as Link, now need to build up your sword and build up yourself. After 3 more dungeons and some spirit realm things, you build up your goddess blade to the Master Sword. You meet Zelda in the past right before she seals herself away, and she gives you the last boost of the sword. Now Zelda tasks you with finding the Triforce. She tells you that she, as the goddess Hylia, became human because gods and goddesses can't use the Triforce. Only mortal creatures can. That's great, Zelda, but you aren't using the Triforce anyway. Link is. That seal on Demise would probably be stronger if you didn't do this, but hey, I'm no expert on magic. Speaking of which, by this point that seal broke twice, so yeah, Zelda, you seem to be, napping on the job. Yeah, okay, I'll stop. Anyway, Link now has to find the Triforce. To do so, he needs a song which is broken into 4 pieces. After pleasing 3 dragons and freeing this creature named Levias from a parasite, you finally learn it. Now you go through one more Spirit Realm challenge and take on the final dungeon. You find the Triforce and drop the final dungeon located in the sky onto Demise's head, killing him. Surprised nobody else could just, do that. Anyway, Girahim, who isn't dead yet, drops in and kidnaps the newly awakened Zelda. He then uses the time gate literally 5 steps away and heads back into time to revive his boss. You defeat Girahim one final time, but oops, too late. Demise revives and gains back his true form. It is here you learn that Girahim is the spirit residing in Demise's sword. Much like Fi helps you awaken, Girahim was only doing the same in a way for Demise. And Demise is very amused that Hylia chose you as her hero. He talks about how humans were weak creatures and that you standing before him readying your sword is such a stark contrast. He opens a portal to another world and allows you to choose if you want to face him. He has waited eons to revive after all. What's another couple of minutes?
Wait. What?
Eons? Did he just say eons? Zelda mentions not much time has passed since Demise's sealing away. She says wounds have yet to heal, but it hints that it wasn't too long ago. How the hell has Demise waited eons? I know the majority of the game takes place in the present time, when that was a long ago fight, but this fight takes place in the past. Time travel, am I right? Anyway, you kill Demise, who claims his hatred won't end, and reincarnate, much like Hylia did, starting the lore of Ganondorf up quite nicely. So now, I know a lot of people defend this story a lot as world building, character driven, but it doesn't actually build up the world a lot for how long it is. Being as simple as it is for how long the story goes on is a bit much. I know the trials Link faces is part of the story, but other than him fetching plot points, nothing really happens. Even the smaller stories in each area aren't really memorable. I hate to say it, but the story is probably the weakest part of this game. Luckily, the character writing is much better. The worst character is probably Link. I love Link, but he's kinda terrible in this game. Okay, not really, but compared to the others, his emotions are weird, to say the least. Yeah, Zelda tells her background story, and he leaves his mouth hanging open. Impa tells him he sucks at being a hero, and Link just takes some drugs and hallucinates the old Zelda. I'm not sure what to make of him. The only reaction he had that I can relate to is when he's diving into the forest from the sky, and then Groose is suddenly flying towards him midair. Not Groose. He is a much better character, possibly the best in the game. He starts the game as a bully to Link. See, Groose is in love with Zelda, but he's jealous of Link's closeness with her. Eventually, later on, he follows Link to the surface, which changes his life. Groose at first figures that he'll just take Link's place in saving Zelda, but when he sees Demise in beast form, he freezes up as Link fights the creature. This is the point. This is the point that Groose goes from acting like, his hair, to becoming a likable character. He actually puts his jealousy aside, realizing Link is indeed the hero of this story. Groose sticks around the area Demise is sealed in and builds a cannon pult and tracks to help face off the demon, and lets Link have his time with Zelda when he feels it's needed. He does eventually save Zelda by catching her when Demise tosses her aside. He even leaves both Link and Zelda as friends and takes off to be the first Gerudo King. I know. It doesn't say anywhere that this is actually canon, but seriously, not many people have red hair and gold eyes, except the Gerudo clan. Anyway, the other important characters are Zelda, Fi, and Impa. Zelda is the best friend trope, but it works that trope very well. She's my personal favorite incarnation of Zelda. Impa is an ass, but for good reason. She is saving Zelda's butt while you're, catching bugs. And like Groose, she grows into a more respectable person towards Link. She also happens to be the old lady who helps Link out a lot at first. And Vi? She tries to grow as a character, and I see her dialogue change slightly through the game to signify her growth as a character, rather than just a tool. But most people probably don't notice it, as it's such a minor detail in speech and writing. It would be easy to gloss over. Most of the minor characters are very interesting to talk to as well, all having their own personalities and backstories, giving the game a bit more life than the batteries on my Wiimote. So, talking about gameplay, this is the biggest thing to divide people for this game. The way I see it, there are two ways to interpret the instructions on how to play. The first way is to think the game is trying to replicate one-to-one control of the sword. When moving the sword, you swing wide. Then trying to center your sword again, you often swing again in a direction you didn't mean to. This will cause you to get hit if a foe in front of you counters you. So if you swing incorrectly, most likely annoying you, since you didn't intend to swing that direction. The second way is this. See how I'm swinging really lightly? This doesn't feel natural to me, but this works. See what I said there? This works. It is awkward, especially if you've ever held a real sword, but it actually works well. When in a high-stress situation, though my old habits do kind of die hard. I'll still argue Red Steel 2 did swordplay better, but this isn't nearly as bad as it used to be for me. All the other items work well enough as long as you can get used to the standard motion controls, and any complaints I've heard about most of these items can literally be fixed with the crafting system. More on that later. The item I hear the most about is the bug net. I've had a few issues with it, but once you figure out how you need to turn the net in a certain direction by tilting the Wiimote, it works perfectly fine. You can make it bigger too if you're still having issues. Outside of this, there are still a few enemies that are annoying to deal with, even when the sword is working properly. Let me tell you about the shield bash, because the game barely does. If you shake the nunchuck the moment an enemy is attacking, you will often block the attack and stun the foe without damaging your shield. This is the most useful ability in the game and absolutely needed in the final two boss fights, but the game barely talks about any of this. Any enemy I used to have issues with, and still probably would, I just shield bash until they died, taking no damage at all if I played right. Honestly, the only issue here is how the game explains these actions, or doesn't really explain them well at all. The explanations aren't great. The gameplay is actually pretty good if you can get it working. If not, prepare for a miserable time dealing with the game's levels. Speaking of which, the way this game works levels kinda sucks. 4 overworlds, 7 actual dungeons, and roughly 12 boss fights. Does anybody else see a pacing issue right off the bat? First issue, the overworlds. They mostly suck. Each is rather large. First, you have Above the Clouds, the biggest one. This is the place where you visit Skyloft and maybe a few minigames and some treasure. Every time you finish a dungeon, you have to come up here just to advance the plot ever so slightly and then go back down to the surface again. Sure, you can side quest here and ride your bird, but unlike Wind Waker, there is no real reason to explore any flying islands you find up here. Flying takes forever, and it's all motion controlled. You get higher and speed up by diving downwards. There are rocks that can accelerate you a lot, but hitting them can be kind of annoying sometimes with how flying works, and there aren't really enough of these. Flying in the clouds is boring and takes forever. Basically in Wind Waker, but worse. Outside of one boss fight with Levias and his parasite that you tackle on your bird, flying is never really fun, if I'm honest. The other overworlds are fine, but you go in and do things, beat a dungeon, and eventually have to come back to tackle a Silent Realm, which is just like the first time you visited, but more annoying. The Silent Realm thing is straight from Twilight Princess and is often considered the worst part of that game. They aren't much better here since you're repeating basic actions with more of a threat. Then after beating the Silent Realm, you have a new item and can finally visit a new area, which outside of the desert overworld normally aren't as good as the first original area you find in that overworld. Then you have to tackle the area a third time and find a dragon, which isn't bad in 2 out of the 3 areas as new things are happening and you're, dealing with them. They're challenging, they're fun. Still, with this pacing, especially broken up by the slow flying sections, this just sucks. The dungeons aren't bad though. Most are your standard affair, but a decent few stand out as some of the best dungeons in the series as a whole. The Ancient Chastern is a fun water puzzle and great heaven and hell gimmick, a super fun boss fight as well as a decent mini boss and fun item to use. The Sand Ship is super fun with time-bending puzzles. The bow is used super well and creative in this game and you get it here. And while the boss is a letdown, the mini boss is fun and getting to this dungeon is even fun compared to some of the others in this game. Skykeep, the location of the Triforce, has the same mini-boss as the Sand Ship, and is a great sliding puzzle gimmick that I actually love solving with elements from all the other dungeons. The other dungeons are pretty decent and fun, like the mining facility and the fire sanctuary. The worst dungeon is literally the first dungeon called Skyview Temple, but the game goes up from there. Dungeon-wise anyway. The boss fights, however, aren't always super great. Girahim repeats 3 times through the game, getting slightly stronger each time you fight him, but the final fight with him is actually pretty good. The imprisoned form of Demise is really the only bad boss fight, and you sadly also fight it 3 different times. Good job, Nintendo! The rest are okay. I like the scorpion you face down in the mining dungeon, and you get to fight it later on. I also really like the boss in the Ancient Chastern. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Levias is also a cool one to mention as well. The only other really good boss fight is Demise, at least its final form. In its true form, as a final boss fight, Demise is actually really fun to fight when the motion controls don't glitch out on you. When they do, and you can't do a Skyward Strike randomly in the final round with him, well, good luck. The other boss fights are okay, but nothing too great. All in all, great level design, at least when you aren't in between dungeons. Let me stress that enough. I mentioned a crafting system a little bit ago that fixes some of the issues with items. People complain about the beetle being too slow. Crafting helps speed it up. Of course, after you get it to hold items, but still. Bugnet controls giving you hell? Make it bigger. Bow not doing enough damage? Upgrade it. Shields break too much? Upgrade them. There should be little reason to grind in this game for supplies. If you are killing your enemies like you should be, you should quickly build up enough loot to build up all your items. The only time this should be an issue is if you live with a black cat that hates you like I do. For some reason, these drops were super rare for me, oftentimes leading me to need to grind. Eventually, after appeasing the monster that I live with, I was able to get all the ingredients I needed. You can find some of these in chests too. Yes, finding something in a treasure chest is odd when it's something like, I don't know, a tumbleweed. But hey, maybe somebody liked that tumbleweed enough to put it in a treasure chest. I don't know. Of course, you can find other treasures in heart pieces. Heart pieces usually refilling your health and actually gaining more health. And other treasures being like little medallions and whatnot. Sometimes you can find these things through small puzzles, and most of the time you find these cubes. Yeah, the goddess cubes have to be hit with a Skyward Strike, a move that you have to point your sword straight up and charge to use. Once you hit the cube, it flies into the sky, opening a treasure chest up above your head in the clouds that you have to painfully and slowly fly to. Yay? There really isn't much outside of that. Collecting rupees with a small wallet is probably more painful in this game due to how expensive certain items are. It sucks. It's always been a problem in other games, but this one it really, really hurts. It isn't bad, and the mini games can be fun, but they do totally feel lackluster. However, there's also the demon. There is a friendly demon you can meet in Skyloft who wants to have you help a bunch of people, who will then produce these gratitude crystals, which look like Japanese candy. Yay! These can be used to upgrade your wallet and get money. Plus, the missions to get them deal with this game's fantastic character writing as you're helping the people of Skyloft. Just their writing motivates me to help most of these characters. The rewards these characters give are pretty decent as well. You know, you can use the gratitude crystals to kind of bump up your wallet, which is fantastic, but there's other things you get as well. There's also working at the Lumpy Pumpkin. You can knock over the Lumpy Pumpkin's chandelier, the Lumpy Pumpkin being a bar outside of Skyloft, and gain a heart piece and a bunch of rupees. It starts a bunch of smaller jobs to earn another heart piece and some money if you keep completing their minigames. This is actually pretty fun. Nothing too bad here. What isn't great still works fine, and what is great works with the character writing, so that's always a good thing. Really, only the goddess cubes are lackluster, but they can still be fun to get in certain situations. If I had to rate this game, I would probably give it around a 7 out of 10. It is a pretty good game, and while I may have hated it before, I've come to respect this game as a whole now. The really biggest issue in all of this is all the small little issues you face. Like the game re-explaining items you've already collected, all because you left the game and came back later, or typical motion control issues that plague pretty much every Wii game. If the game explained itself better, or didn't have horrible pacing with the levels and story, I'd probably rate this higher. And if you can't get a grip on the motion controls, it's easily a 6 out of 10, maybe even a 5. Odds are that this is the make or break for you, as even with working motion controls, this game still has a few decent issues. I wouldn't call this a bad game though. Many people love this game, and that's because they figured out how to make the game work really quickly. I'll admit, figuring out the proper controls, I actually enjoyed my time with this game a lot compared to my first playthrough. If I ever have to play this game again, I won't be as grossed out as I was before. However, I won't play this for a while. This is a long game. Jeez, it's already October. My next review won't be Minish Cap, but that will be the next Zelda game I'm tackling. Hopefully you enjoyed my review enough to leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and YouTube should be showing you other videos of mine if you're interested. Thanks for watching, and take care, my minions. So, Kirby's Adventure was my introduction into the Kirby franchise. The NES game, which Kirby first got his copy ability, isn't what you're seeing, is probably what you're thinking. Sauron, this couldn't be an NES game, it looks too damn good. And you're right. Let me get to that. So with the success of Kirby on the Game Boy after Kirby's Dream Land, Nintendo wanted HAL, the company making Kirby games, to make one for the NES as well. The game was created pushing the console to its max in graphics and color, and was the first to introduce Kirby to the one thing that really sets him apart, his copy ability. That is the game I played for many times at my aunt's house. When it came out for the Virtual Console as well as the Kirby Collection, I was eager to play it again. However, there is a version of Kirby's Adventure I never got to play until this review. Only available on the Game Boy Advance or the Wii U Virtual Console. This is Nightmare in Dreamland. Yeah, they thought that when the Game Boy Advance was a thing, they'd remake one of the best NES games of all time and call it Nightmare in Dreamland. With the Kirby anime debuting around the same time, the marketing was perfect for this. But how well did this all go? I guess we'll find out when I take on the true bad guy of this game, Nightmare. So, yeah, let's take on Nightmare! So, the first thing the game does with this is pull a red herring on you. It talks about how King Dedede is the villain of the story. No one can dream in Dreamland, and it's because the king is bathing in the Fountain of Dreams. King Dedede also split the Star Rod, a rod granting dreams, into pieces and gave them to his best bad guys. Kirby's job is to go decimate King Dedede's forces and restore the fountain. In a dramatic twist, however, Dedede was actually doing this to stop this evil nightmare guy who rode in on the waves of the Dream Fountain. King Dedede managed to seal the guy in the fountain, and that's why he split up the Star Rod, so it wouldn't free him. When Kirby restores the fountain, Nightmare emerges in a ball form, and Dedede inhales Kirby and the Star Rod and blasts him after the monster. Eventually, Kirby destroys the monster called Nightmare and restores good dreams to Dreamland, while realizing King Dedede isn't all that bad. Not really shocking that this story is really simple, just like the last time we visited Kirby. If you thought there was going to be like a whole bunch of world building to explain Kirby's new copy powers, no. He just has copy move now. Yep. Just out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. However, the story is original in a good way. While Dedede is still a fat penguin, he does actually look out for the people that he is supposed to be protecting, even doing terrible things to save the day. What an adorable anti-hero. Maybe I shouldn't have hit him so hard this game, or maybe even in the last game. Regardless, the switch to a worse villain is something not often seen in NES era, so it's a good thing for sure at this point. Simple, but effective. It's always a win for me. And characterization is no exception here either. Obviously, they can't give characters a bunch of dialogue for an NES platformer. I mean, they could for the remake, but they didn't. Still, Meta Knight is here. The tough frenemy of Kirby came out the same game that the copy ability did, which is actually really kind of cool. He gives you power-ups, or, you know, sometimes he has his minions attack you as like a mid-boss. Just kind of depends on his mood. He also tests you, giving you a sword so that you can have an epic sword fight with him. The battle was epic as a kid, anyway. And, you know, it's still kind of cool now. Honor, respect, and while Meta Knight is trying to protect Dreamland from Nightmare like King Dedede is, he still helps you out once in a while. His kind of cool rival character is especially common today, but Meta Knight is one of the first examples of this. All coming from a game where the sun and moon gang up on you to beat you up. Kirby isn't exactly well liked in this game. Kirby's dancing, the cute intro animations that return from Dreamland, enemies getting mad at Kirby. This game has loads of charm that mostly returns in the remake. The only thing I can see that got cut is the spinning tower effect the NES game had. Why? I'm not sure. Now they are just still rooms. You just spend enough time in them and the door opens up. Some of the enemies and mid-bosses changed up too. Not sure what's wrong with turtles. Maybe Mario didn't like Kirby butting in? Now that mid-boss is literally an elephant. Huh, weird. Overall, though, the cute enemies you devour like a demon to bosses having personality in just their facial expressions, this game is oozing with charm in either the original or the remake. So this game plays exactly like Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy, a game I reviewed last month. The biggest difference? Easily the copy ability. So if you eat certain enemies in this game, you gain an ability similar to the power held by your now devoured foe. Kinda metal thinking about it. There are large amounts of powers in this game, but some, like Needle, Electric, and Freeze, kind of act in an incredibly similar way. These examples form areas of effect that you can just kind of sit there and kind of shield you from attacks, but also hurts enemies that run into it. These are my favorite type. Some abilities let you carry weapons like a sword, an umbrella, a hammer. There's this laser for some sniping and reflecting. There's Beam, which sounds like it would just be like laser, but it's not, as well as Fire and Ice, which are smaller area of effects that, you know, are kind of like breath attacks. And there's some moves that allow you to ram into enemies and obstacles like Tornado, Wheel, and Burning. There are a few harder to get moves that are more original, but these are pretty basics that you'll find throughout the game. Think of these as basic power-ups. Getting hit can cause you to lose them. Unlike Mario, however, Kirby has a chance to recover his power, similar to Sonic collecting rings. The only other power-up in this game is the Invincibility Lollipop, at least all of the ones that I could find anyway. Other than that, there are once again health pickups like the tomato and his juice bottle. Pretty much everything works how you'd expect. While there are many abilities, since they all do similar functions to one another, they aren't hard to learn and use effectively. However, even without a power-up ability, Kirby can still inhale and spit out enemies like ammo from Dreamland, and that works just as good, if not better, in most situations. Yes, the abilities add some gameplay variation with different playthroughs, and that's pretty good. But the level design doesn't exactly complement this new ability. Most of the abilities Kirby can get through his dead foes are kinda situational. Some attack around Kirby's entire body, which are probably the most useful most of the time, and some only attack up front. Worse, some charge forward until you hit a wall, and if your foe is at the wall as well, prepare for touch damage. Not all the levels are built around these powers in mind, and the remake is kinda worse, as animations of the move often take slightly longer to perform, and some bosses and mini-bosses are slightly bigger and move around more. This makes boss fights slightly more difficult with a copy ability, especially one not suited to the situation. I wouldn't call this game super challenging though. Even in tougher situations, I'd just call it annoying at worst, when your favorite power-up is pretty much worthless in a few certain levels. Worse, sometimes you can get a cool new ability from one of the rarer mini-bosses, and then an enemy you just don't see off-screen just comes out and snipes you out of nowhere. I love it. Some enemies fly down from above, and if you weren't expecting them, bam, your ability is gone. Sometimes the generic fire enemies shoot fireballs through obstacles towards you before you're aware that the attack is coming, or before you even are aware that they're there. And because they basically shoot it from off screen. Ugh, it's so frustrating to get hit by one of these and lose a really cool power-up. These all sound like terrible issues, I know, and they are annoying and contradict the new ability system, but the levels are often super short or super forgiving. Yeah, they negate the issue by having a ton of options for health items anywhere nearby, and lives that are super easy to get, especially in the remake. Outside of the occasional burn or electric knockback killing me, I found the levels to be enjoyable for the most part. They are well designed and look fantastic in 16 bits instead of 8. The boss fights are fun and memorable, and some of the levels have different routes to take leading to replayability. Each level looks unique too. You can tell a lot about where you are on each level just because the backgrounds are so damn well designed. They were made to look that way too. It's actually really cool. You know what else is cool in Kirby? The boss fights. The boss fights are creatively designed, with Kracko and Whispy returning from the previous game. They all look great and are more challenging this time around. DDD also returns, but beating him again is slightly more forgiving, only because he shoots you to the real final boss, Nightmare. Nightmare's a flying shooter boss, and it's kinda timed, and then the final fight is with his real form, which you have to deplete this large health bar by attacking his weak spot. You get the Star Rod as a weapon in this fight too. Best boss fight though? Easily Meta Knight. The sword fight with him almost makes you forget these characters are super adorable. Honestly, the level design is fantastic, and while I mentioned a lot of issues, I find that they're less noticeable in the original. I still can't exactly ignore them either though. However, there is a bit of a reason to explore said stages. At first, most of the side content opens automatically while beating a stage. In later levels, almost every single stage has a switch that opens things like the side minigames where you collect lives or some of the museum things. Some of these are super easy to spot, and the remake makes them even easier. But some of these switches are very creatively hidden and have clever puzzles associated with them. Finding these switches are fun and needed for the best secret in the game, but I'll get into that in a bit. The side content is mostly minigames. You can play for extra lives if you really want to. In the original, there was a quick draw game and a game that, allows you to catch eggs and not bombs, as well as a claw grab game. Here in the remake, they are far improved. Quick draw is back, but samurai style. There's a grind rail race that is actually really fun, and hot potato with the potato being an explosive. They are fun, and you can easily rack up lives if you're having a lot of difficulty in the game. Why you'd have difficulty in the game, I'm not quite sure, but, it's there. They do actually get harder the later you go, by the way. Outside of those, there are also room with free copy abilities and mini-boss fights you can do for some of those special abilities in Maximum Tomatoes. Now for the best secret. If you manage to open up all of the overworld with these switches and beat the game, you can get Extra Mode. Extra Mode is a harder version of the game in which you have less life than normal. If you were to beat this on, say, the original NES, you'd actually unlock Sound Test, which is a pretty okay reward. But you're probably thinking to yourself, well, Sauron, why are you so excited about this? You hate extra modes and hard modes. And one, I don't hate them, they're just not my thing. And two, that's when we get into the remake. If you beat extra mode, which is savable in the remake and not in the original, something I should probably mention, you unlock a mode in which you get to play as Meta Knight. Yes, Kirby's Adventure is Meta Knight's first appearance. The remake, Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland, marks Meta Knight's first playable role. Meta Knight's playstyle is a vastly upgraded Sword Kirby. Meta Knight is also faster. Like Extra Mode, however, Meta Knight only has 3 bars of health, and you can't save, similar to Extra Mode in the previous NES version. This is a fantastic secret to unlock, making the remake better in the secrets department than in the original. So, if I were to score this game on recommendability, I'd probably give it a 9. This actually goes for both the remake and the original. There is plenty of charm, the story is original and cute, and the gameplay is fantastic. I think the level design has slightly less flaw in the original than the remake, but the remake has better reward for completing the game. Once again, the biggest obstacle gamers are going to have is the difficulty. Harder than Kirby's Dream Land for sure, but with the simple puzzle solving and stage exploration handing you extra lives, yeah. Also, the side minigames hand you extra lives regularly as well, and even in extra mode, it isn't that challenging compared to other platformers like, I don't know, Mario or Sonic or Crash Bandicoot. Overall, this is a fantastic game to begin players new to platforming. And while not super difficult, it's still a fun challenge, offering a bit more in my opinion than Kirby's Dream Land. The remake kind of offers the same in regards to all of this, but adds a degree of portability if you can find this on the original Game Boy Advance. I never have, I'm actually using the Virtual Console off the Wii U. Both versions are super good, with Kirby's Adventure being far easier to gain officially, like on the Switch, 3DS, Wii U, but the remake is only on the original Game Boy Advance and the Wii U Virtual Console. Pick either, and if you like Kirby reviews, I should probably have one up somewhere over towards the left of the screen. You know, since I did review Kirby's Dream Land. If you liked the video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, blah blah blah. If you want more, click the bell and subscribe. Those really need to be dusted off down there, just saying. Thanks for watching, and hopefully next time I'll have a nice Halloween review for you all. Take care. Luigi's Mansion began life as a tech demo. It was a video showcasing what the GameCube's power in games would be like to investors at E3. While originally a tech demo, Nintendo decided for some reason to make this into a full-fledged game to run with the 3D capabilities of the GameCube that the GameCube was supposed to have. However, the 3D function of the GameCube was eventually dropped, but luckily Luigi's Mansion was ported over to the 3DS. The 3DS port is reported as being harder with some changes, locations, and some minor differences. The big pull is co-op. And you know, I don't have many friends who could play the 3DS with, so with that, I'll be focusing on the original GameCube hit. I don't own the 3DS version at the moment either, so I haven't actually played it, and I can't really comment on it as of yet. Nonetheless, Luigi's Mansion was a game that I got early in my GameCube playing experience, because I got it for Christmas one year. I ended up with a GameCube, you know, Luigi's Mansion, and Smash Bros. Melee and Pikmin is a great Christmas. However, I also know this game is shorter than most too. I ended up beating the game in a week, and there was, you know, some in-between with Smash Brothers, figuring out Pikmin. It wasn't the hardest game ever, but I remember it being fairly fun. Still, I didn't exactly pick up Luigi's Mansion 2, nor have I bought the remake, or, 3, since 3 just came out the same day this video came out, so I think I can be forgiven for that one. Regardless, it is Halloween. I'm dressed as a psychopath this year, and I'm ready to throw down with the booze. Let's take on King Boo! So the game begins. Luigi won a mansion somehow, and Mario, suspicious of the intention of it, goes to check it out. Now Mario is missing. Dog? Why are you laughing? Ugh, weird dog of mine. Anyway, Luigi decides to go check out the mansion himself after, Mario never returns. He ends up meeting Professor Egad in the mansion while dealing with his fear of ghosts. Egad remembers Mario and offers to help since the mansion just kind of appeared randomly outside of his humble abode one day. Turns out Egad has been ghost hunting for a long time. He had a collection of ghosts sealed in pictures, but the Boos came in and freed all of those ghosts. Now it is up to Luigi to find Mario, return the portrait ghosts, and stop the Boos. In the mansion, Luigi finds the ghosts are all in there while the Boos are napping, waiting for Luigi to show up. Luigi also learns that King Boo captured his brother, put him in a picture like a ghost, and that Bowser is somehow involved. Luigi does this by finding a bunch of items and giving them to a fortune teller, who's also a ghost. Eventually, Luigi tames the mansion, defeats enough Boos to break King Boo's hold on the mansion, and tackle the king head-on. The king actually has a Bowser disguise, like from the first Mario Brothers? Yeah, this makes Bowser the final boss of sorts when your target is King Boo. Basically, you fight Bowser, but you're trying to capture King Boo, who's inside the Bowser costume. Yeah, it's kind of weird. After defeating the king, Luigi saves Mario. They have a tearful reunion. And Luigi builds a real house with the treasure that he found around the place. So is the plot good? It certainly is original. Instead of a princess, you're saving Mario. And instead of Bowser, you're facing off against ghosts. Even though Bowser's still kind of in the plot somehow. It is a simple plot, but is fun enough, and saving the biggest Nintendo hero certainly is motivation enough for most people to press onward. Meanwhile, Luigi is facing the thing that he fears the most, ghosts. Yeah, Luigi is portrayed in this game as being incredibly afraid of spirits. This game likes to down on Luigi, calling him a coward and whatnot, and he does shake a lot and get startled very easily in the game. But he's facing his biggest fear. Not only that, he is defeating his greatest fear to save his brother. Luigi is pretty awesome in this game. King Boo also is characterized as having a bit of fun with his enemies, wanting to torture and scare Luigi and Mario rather than just destroying them. He is intelligent, cunning, and wants Mario as a furniture piece like he's playing Animal Crossing. He also holds a Bowser outfit to help him, fight you. Egad is characterized as a friendly ghost-hunting old man. There isn't anything more to him, but the way he talks is charming. Last but not least, all the portrait ghosts. They are family and literally all have their own personalities and charm to them. While some are simple, some are also very morbid. This guy, he ate himself to death. This baby died before even being born. This girl literally died in her sleep. While not super terrifying, this game can be very unsettling for kids. Regardless, it is all interesting stuff, even when short and simple, making the game stand out with charming characters. Luigi's reactions, music, it's all really appealing here. So when talking about the gameplay, this game is tug of war. That's it. You find a ghost, you surprise them with a flashlight, and play tug of war until they're caught. Just like that one movie. It's a bit more complex, sure, as pulling the C stick and the control stick in opposite directions the ghost is fleeing sucks them up faster, but it's literally tug of war. There's a short tutorial, but it doesn't really exactly prepare you for the trials ahead, as pulling on ghosts is harder than it probably should be due to obstacles in the level. You can often pull on more than one ghost at a time, making it harder to catch the ghost, but it gives you a health heart, as Luigi has a health meter in this game. Yeah, Health is abundant in the game, but it's still nice to see something other than, the typical mushroom power-up, which are mostly absent. I say mostly because the poison mushrooms return to wreak havoc on you for stronger ghosts. So if the combat is tug of war, how does something like that stay interesting for a full game? 1, the game is really short. 2, combat isn't exactly the main focus of the game. No, this game is more of a puzzle game than anything. You have access to a device called the Game Boy Horror that can be used to view things in first person while, looking at how to progress. It can also kind of find information on portrait ghosts, so it's pretty useful. While regular ghosts are just typical waves of unique enemy types that bring new threats the further you dive into the mansion, portrait ghosts are more like puzzles. You often find them in a unique room, and it's up to you to figure out how to stun them with your flashlight and capture them. They are bulkier than normal foes and drop poison mushrooms while you fight them. Once you know what to do, they aren't hard to deal with, but each portrait ghost has a different objective that will stun them. I only saw 2 ghosts that had similar circumstances. This billiard ghost right here and Grandma over here. Both have to be shot 3 times at their own attack. Everything else is pretty different, from easy things like wanting a ghost to yawn and moving a curtain to smacking a ghost with punching bags and dodging icicle attacks while unthawing it. Obviously, level design plays a huge part here. Seriously though, some of these ghosts are like mini boss fights. It kind of reminds me of Legend of Zelda in a way, actually. Some of these rooms are built to be tough to capture the spirits, as they can put you in furniture and break away by slamming you into things. They can't hurt Luigi while being captured as long as they don't drag him, but some of these ghosts even have attacks that you have to deal with. They are some ghosts who can be annoying to capture, and the regular enemies aren't exactly exciting either. Look, regular ghosts have several different types, normally being ghosts that punch and have a varying strength and health meter. The same thing, but an element that you need to counter with another element, similar to Pokemon. There are these trash cans that can throw banana peels and ghosts that can grab you from behind. They try to change things up with ghosts being invisible unless you can see them through a huge mirror or a projector, but this doesn't happen very often. Since I brought it up, let's talk about elements. Through your mansion travels, you're gonna find tokens that allow you to basically use elements. More or less fire, ice, and water, and they can technically be used for combat. You can do a quick blast of the element or a steady stream. This is okay against normal ghosts, but not good with anything else. It's mostly used for puzzle solving and treasure hunting, which is the best thing about the level design if I'm to be honest. However, sometimes they make you use the element in a boss fight. There are 4 boss fights, and I like about 2 of them. Chansey is a great first boss, and Bogmire is fun. King Boo technically isn't bad, but I'm a bit salty though. See, most boss fights you can suck up a ball or something at a distance. King Boo in his Bowser costume throws bombs that you're supposed to shoot back at them. Unlike Chansey's balls, however, you can't suck them up from a distance. You need to walk up to them and touch them. Nothing really warns you about this, and it happens out of nowhere, because it doesn't happen anywhere else in the game, that I can recall anyway. Also, when sucking King Boo into the vacuum, the Bowser head floating around snipes you from off-screen sometimes, so be careful of that. The final fight is a beginner's trap, and I dislike it, but once you know what to do and look out for, it's not that bad and can be a pretty fun fight. But don't get me started on Boolossus. Ugh. It's like when you like a new soda flavor and they discontinue it as soon as you like it. You're supposed to shoot ice at smaller boos that make up the large boss fight. However, they flee from your ice stream. It is so slow that it often misses, especially if there aren't many of them left. And if you think you can just use the blast, that's incredibly difficult to aim due to the camera and the fixed camera angle. Depth perception is your main enemy in this game. This fight drags on, and trying to catch that last boo while the little pain in the neck is taking pot shots at you. Ugh. Don't expect to get a gold frame from this ghost your first time facing him. Or your second. or your third. Since I just brought up gold picture frames, let me explain how they work. In boss fights and Portrait Ghosts, you can get your pictures framed. In boss fights, if your health doesn't fall below 90, you get a gold frame showing how awesome you did. There's also silver and bronze ranks too for boss fights. Basically, the lower your health, the more likely you are to get a bronze rank, and the higher your health, the more likely you are to get silver and gold. Each frame also gets a different picture, which is kind of neat. You can also see how well you dealt with regular Portrait Ghosts too. If you drain 90 points of health from them in one capture attempt, you will earn that nice golden frame picture. You will also earn a big pearl from them, which is nice. Yeah, you get paid for capturing the Portrait Ghosts. The longer you are trying to suck them up, the more pearls you get, and you get bigger ones worth more money too. Each room normally has little areas you can find money in. If you really want Luigi loaded, you can find some big secret cash catches. First, there are golden mice. You can find them in blocks of cheese in the game, but you can only see these with the Game Boy Horror. There are about 5 of them that I know of. Scan the cheese and a mouse will run out. Catch the golden mouse in your vacuum and you get a cash bonus. Same with the blue ghosts. These things are hiding in furniture. You dry hump the furniture they're hiding in, and they will leap out and shock you. If you're fast enough, you can catch them for a large treasure payout. If you aren't fast enough, these fast-moving buggers are incredibly hard to catch, but are worth it in cash alone. If you're still strapped, remember some rooms and hallways will also randomly spawn golden mice, which will also drop treasure. More gold, you say? Well, watering plants usually yields money. And if you take care of this big flower with your water, you can get a ton of money from it, as well as a golden diamond, the best gem in the game. You can get another by catching every boo in the game. Once you free them, boos tend to hide in rooms that are lit up. Keep humping the furniture and you'll eventually find them. But the Game Boy Horror does have a radar on it for this specific reason. You have to catch a lot of them to beat the game. I think you need about 80% of them, but catching them all... it's an outright pain. Seriously, some of these boos have huge health pools, making them annoying. If that wasn't bad enough, if you don't catch them fast enough, and you often won't with the later boos, they just straight up leave the room. In the attic, this is annoying because the boos have massive health pools, the rooms are small, and the hallways connecting the rooms are smaller. Also, you have to walk around a lot because they'll just straight up go through walls, and there's a fake door there. No, you have to go all the way around. It's an absolute drag. There's also 2 hidden rooms, one of which you need to scan a mouse hole, which will teleport you to the room, and the other can be reached from the rooftop. There is also the very rare optional Portrait Ghost. Yes, you don't have to catch every Portrait Ghost. I think there's about 5 you can pretty much just skip. But oftentimes you'll see them and you won't realize that they're actually optional. Most give you a key when you defeat them, or one of Mario's 5 hidden items you need to beat the game. But the optional ones give you treasure. With all this cash, what does Luigi do with it? Does he buy new vacuum upgrades? No. He buys a real mansion. I ended up with a rank A, the best rank, which my friends from the PAL region can't get without a second playthrough. The second playthrough is basically a hard mode of sorts. You can replay the game, and it can net you more cash from this, but the ghosts are kinda harder to deal with. This is the easiest way to get rank A, the best house in the game, or the only way to get it in Europe. I think I've been droning on long enough, so let's try and wrap this up. If I had to give this game a score, I'd probably feel that an 8 out of 10 is the fairest score I can give it. It's a good game. To most, it's a very great game. But it isn't anything life-changing either. If you like finding treasure and secrets, puzzle solving, tug of war, and exploration, you're on the right page with this game. I also, figured the story is pretty original with Luigi saving Mario. Why are you laughing and wearing a Freddy Krueger outfit?
I'm your worst nightmare.
No, I've pretty much had worse. Anyway, the game has a staggering amount of charm in it. Even the hidden song that you can find in this control menu, it's charming because, you know, you can find it in many other different games, just saying. However, I think the enemies are lacking a lot, and while the puzzle elements make up for this, the waves of enemies lack creativity, and the game can get kind of dull when you're in fights. The boss fights are okay with some decent ones and bosses, and the gameplay to fight them is mostly one mechanic used again and again. Only things like chair placement really hurts your odds on catching ghosts, or when you have to shoot the rare projectile at them. As long as those aren't deal breakers, try the game out if you can get an old GameCube. Or maybe try the 3DS version? While I haven't played it, I also hear it's not as good as the original GameCube's version, but I also hear that it will do in a pinch. But that's all the time I have today. King Boo is soundly defeated, never to return in a 3DS sequel or a Switch title coming out today. Or return in Mario Sunshine while on LSD. Yeah, he never comes back. Don't at me. Don't look it up. Just believe me. If you like the video, please leave a like, comment, which always helps, subscribe, which helps nothing, and hit the bell for actual notifications on my channel's work. Hopefully next main review, I'll be returning to the Legend of Zelda series. It is November coming up after all. I'm currently working on beating every main single-player Zelda game while I hype myself up Breath of the Wild 2, so, you know, you can always stay tuned for that. The next victim of my fight is Vaati, but if you want my opinions on Demise, this game's, you know, Skyward Sword, or how Girahim would work in Smash Brothers, both of those videos should be up on screen by the time I'm saying this. Until next time, take care, my minions. Oh, and, you know, happy Halloween. Bye-bye! The Minish Cap is considered to be one of the most underrated Game Boy Advance games of all time. It's one of the gems that was just kind of lost in time during the Game Boy Advance's life cycle. A game that, for the most part, is exclusive to the console. The Minish Cap was created by the same team that created Oracle of Seasons and Ages from the look of things. Flagship and Capcom have a tendency to create original villains for games they work on, and this looks to be no exception. Looking to expand on their creature and four swords. Yeah, they made that too. They ended up creating this game with Nintendo's approval, hence the legend of the Minish people, as well as the origin of Vaati, the demon of the four swords. I never had a chance to play this game growing up. I sadly only played the game on the Wii U Virtual Console. When I did, however, I touted it was my favorite 2D Zelda game of all time, even compared to Link to the Past. Opinions do change over time, however. After a second playthrough, is this still one of my favorite Zelda titles? Or did the magic rub off once I took off the hat of excitement? Let's find out as I dive in once more in the world of the Minish and fight an evil sorcerer. Let's take on Vaati! So, the game starts up, and Link is tasked to deliver a sword to the royal palace. Turns out he's a blacksmith apprentice in this game. Huh. While Link is supposed to deliver a sword to the fighting tourney, he does pal around with this game's version of Zelda. Come to find out they are childhood friends in this game. When checking out the festival, you hear the setup. The people of Hyrule are celebrating a time in the past when a hero joined forces with the Minish people and defeated a great evil. Well, another evil is unfortunately here. The winning of the fighting tourney is a dark mage named Vaati, and instead of taking your sword, he curses Zelda to turn into stone, and opens a dark chest releasing monsters into the world. While doing this, he also breaks the legendary sword as well, which is now your job to seek out the Minish people, also known as the Dakari, and fix this legendary blade. You are a child after all, and only children can see this small race of people. How convenient! Link eventually travels to the woods, and meeting a hat bird-like thing named Eslo, they decide to team up. It turns out Ezlo can shrink Link down to the size of Vikori himself. Eventually, this leads him in a quest to gather 4 special elements to reforge the blade into what eventually will become the 4 swords. Meanwhile, Vaati isn't exactly done yet, and eventually disposes of the King of Hyrule and takes his place, barring Link out of the castle and basically taking over. See, Vaati is after a power called the Light Force. Eventually, towards the end of the game, Vaati learns the Light Force is within Princess Zelda, so he goes to extract it, which will end up killing the princess. Eventually, you have the ultimate clash with Vaati and slay the beast. After he dies, the castle begins crumbling, but Zelda, now free of stone, uses a hat he dropped to restore the castle and everyone back to life. So, Vaati was using a powerful hat called the Mage's Cap, which was created by his mentor, Ezlo. Yeah, the guy you're wearing on your head. Ezlo and Vaati were both Vikori mages. Ezlo asks for forgiveness for making a powerful hat, restores himself to his original form, and yeets the hell out of the castle before saying goodbye. Everything is back to normal and the day is saved. So is the writing good? Well, yes and no. The story itself is fantastic, actually. For a Zelda story not relying on Ganon, it's pretty damn good. Sure, it isn't winning any awards for originality, but it gets its job done well. The character dialogue, on the other hand, is meh at best. It isn't terrible, but not many of the characters outside of Ezlo and Vaati stand out. Zelda is also good, but only shows up at the beginning of the game and at the butt end. Even side characters are kind of boring, outside their references to other Zelda games, like Malon. Yeah, Malon is here, and that's about all her character is. She sells milk, and you have to solve a puzzle at a ranch with her father, who's passed out, by the way. Yeah, whoop-dee-doo. Even the sages Din, Nayru, and Feora make cameos, and they're still lacking personality! So while the characters don't have as much interesting things to say, there is thankfully plenty of charm here. Most of the characters you find are cameos from other Zelda games, giving characters a charm they lack in dialogue, especially if you're a fan of Wind Waker. The game borrows heavily from the Wind Waker art style and aesthetic, and in turn has plenty of characters from that game. Probably why I enjoyed this so much on my first time through. Yeah, I really love Wind Waker. Second favorite Zelda game. So of course, people nostalgic to that game will like Minish Cap their first time through. Not all the characters are references, and not all the cameos are Wind Waker. There are few between Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, and the Oracle games as well. There are also regions based around the older Zelda games. A swamp in which you need Pegasus boots, and a story from Skyward Sword, but you know, much better. Oh wait, this predates Skyward Sword. My bad. The setting looks fantastic for a Game Boy Advance as well. Every area is different enough to stand on its own. Really, the only downside is the music, which, while not bad, reuses a lot of tunes from other Zelda games, and has to fight the Game Boy Advance's horrible sound chip. Really, this game has plenty of charm to every enemy, boss design, world, settings. It does help make up for a lackluster dialogue, which most of these characters have while you play the game. So, talking about the gameplay, this game plays remarkably similar to A Link to the Past. For those of you who haven't played A Link to the Past, you can use whatever items you have set to the A or B button. If you are near something you can grab, you can use the R button to grab it, or alternatively, you can read or talk to whatever it is too. You gain items over time, but the basic sword swinging and shield actions are there, as well as bombs, arrows, and a boomerang. Ha! Ha ha! I said rang. You know, like the phone rang, you old boomer. Didn't you hear it? Gotcha. Anyway, you can also dig using mole mitts and charge forward using the Pegasus boot. There's also a cane that can flip things over and has some weird effects. Overall, though, this game basically plays how you'd expect it. For the most part, it is easy enough to figure out what items are supposed to do what when it, you know, comes up in puzzles. Wall with cracks on it? Bombs. Obvious target out of reach? Arrows. It's simple and yet very effective gameplay that we've had for a while, but it works perfectly fine here. The game is indeed fun to play. The levels, however, aren't exactly as fun as the gameplay. Unfortunately, this is where things begin to fall behind on comparing it to other titles. First up, let's talk about the overworld. Oftentimes to progress, you have to stumble upon a tiny cave and solve a puzzle in said cave to progress. This isn't bad if you know the general direction to travel in which the map does provide, but sometimes you think you need an item when all along it was duplication pads you needed, hidden in an obscure cave that you probably didn't notice right away. Oh, right, I didn't explain those. Occasionally when you upgrade the sword, the Minish Blade, with each element you gain the ability to duplicate Link. They can help you push blocks and on a rare occasion help you fight with your sword. Cool. It can be a pain keeping all of these links alive, and to duplicate, explaining the duplication process is a little complicated, but here's how it goes. First off, you can charge your sword to do a spin attack. It's a very common thing you can do in Legend of Zelda games. But to charge up a spin attack in this game is a tad bit of a longer process. When you get to that point, a gauge appears, and it's longer than hell. You need to charge up that entire gauge. Once you do this, you can duplicate by stepping on a few pads that you want the formation in. Basically, you have to maneuver Link around these pads to make sure you don't accidentally duplicate one in the wrong direction. For puzzle solving, this isn't as terrible as it sounds. The windup is long, sure, but puzzles are often fun. In dungeons. In Overworld, you have to find these pads, which can suck if you think small-looking caves are just side quest fodder. These are also annoying to work in battle, but luckily it shows up very rarely. The next issue is growing and shrinking in the Overworld exploration. Once again, in dungeons, shrinking and growing isn't too bad, but it isn't great because again, it's a longer process. See, the shrinking has a quick cutscene, and then you're small. When you're small, it takes you longer to trek long distances. In dungeons, this sometimes can be a longer walk, and it slows down the game a lot. In the overworld, or in town, this can take forever, it seems. And if you're trying to solve a puzzle between growing and shrinking, this makes side questing, or even the main quest, slower than dial-up. If you're too young to know what dial-up is, let's just say it's super slow. However, if you think every level is a drag in this game, you'd actually be wrong. The dungeons are really well designed and are real award winners here. The boss fights are fun too. A fight in the sky, fighting regular enemies but giant, the machine from Wind Waker, these fights are really fun overall. And then we get to Vaati himself. He can be a bit annoying, but once you figure out what to do, Vaati is a test of skill that is worth the climactic adventure. So, while the overworld is trash, the dungeons and boss fights do everything correctly, even with the occasional annoying enemy or puzzle. But what happens after sealing Vaati away? After the final blow is struck, what keeps Link adventuring? Well, let's take a look. There are some hidden upgrades to items and weapons you can find around the map. There are plenty of heart pieces all about. But most of the side quests will have you hunting tablet pieces. See, there's these things called keystones in the game. You find the left side of every keystone in existence, and the people of Hyrule all find the right sides of the keystones. If you find someone and complete a keystone with them, something will happen, fixing you a treasure or side quest event. Different color keystones get you different things. So instead of helping people and solving puzzles, most of the side quests are just this. Not all, but most. These aren't as fun as they could be, and they can get old pretty quickly. Finding people with certain keystones can be a hassle as well, and if you run out of a particular keystone and need it for a quest, you have to slay, find treasure, or buy it to complete a side quest. The other major collectible in this game is seashells! Yeah! Alright. They're actually figurine collectibles. You trade in seashells like, Smash Brothers tokens, and the higher number of seashells, the more likely you are to find a new figurine. These figures are basically bosses, NPCs, and enemies in the game. They're fun, and they give you a little bit of information on each creature and NPC that you find, but the process to trade the seashells is so damn slow! Literally as bad as shrinking on the overworld. I'd almost rather listen to this. Seriously, side questing just isn't as fun as other Zelda games, or many other games in general. None of them feel unique or super rewarding. As such, I didn't honestly do much this time around. There are several side quests not needing keystones, but feeding a dog isn't exactly exciting either. Upgrading weapons is nice, but they were so late in the game, I just slayed Vade with normal equipment. So yeah, not really all that fun. So overall, there really isn't anything bad about Minish Cap, but it doesn't quite hold up as well as I remember either. While the overall story is perfectly fine, characters are just kind of boring. They have charm since they're almost all references to different games, but outside of that, they have no personality. If this is your first Zelda game, you probably won't like any of the side characters at all. Still, there's plenty of charm to the game. Music, location, sprite quality are all top-notch here. The gameplay does a great job as well. Then we falter again in level design because being too spacious for small Link and boring overworld. Speaking of boring, the side quests are too. They aren't bad, they work, but they aren't anything to write home about. Honestly, if I have to rate the game, I would probably give it a 7 out of 10. Or a good rating, if you will. If you like having a portable game with plenty of charm and spunk, this game is for you. The dungeons are great, and dialogue and writing is pretty good among the main cast. But outside of the building up of some extra health, I'd avoid pretty much everything else as much as you can. Focus on the main quest as much as possible, and you'll probably enjoy this title well enough. That's all the time I have to discuss Minish Cap, however. Body is disposed of, and since I can't get 4 swords, he will stay that way unless I talk about him maybe being playable in Smash Brothers. As for the next main review, it's looking like it's going to be Doom from 2016. That wasn't even on my original hit list, but hey, surprises happen. Until then, take care, my minions. One more thing. Don't necessarily take my ratings too awfully seriously. A 7 out of 10 isn't necessarily a bad rating per se. It just means that if I was going to recommend this game to, like, Zelda fans or fans of this type of genre, I would probably roughly estimate that 70% of them would really like the game, and about 30% might not. So, yeah, don't take that too awfully seriously as, oh man, it's not 9, bro, I'm not gonna do that. It's just a rating, it's just an opinion anyway, but, I just figured I'd let you guys know on how I'm going to be rating systems going on from here on out. So, take care. Bye-bye. So, real quick before I start this video, this is Doom. Don't get me wrong, I mean, there's going to be spoilers if you haven't played the game yet and you want to be spoiler-free. If it's on your hit list, by all means, click away from this video. But this game is one of the most violent first-person shooter games of all time. Not only that, but there are a lot of demonic creatures in this game. If this bothers you, or you are under 17, I would recommend turning away now. But with that out of the way, let's get on to talking about Doom. Never thought I'd say that within this year in a video. Sure, the thought of playing Doom was there, but I'm not a big FPS kind of gamer. First-person shooters is what FPS means if you're not aware. They typically don't interest me. However, with all the talk about Doom recently, all the retro games on modern consoles, and Doom Eternal coming out, I decided to watch a popular Let's Player to satisfy my curiosity. And I went out and bought Doom 2016 soon afterwards. Sure, I've played the original Doom despite my parents trying to keep me from violent video games, but I never really set out to beat it. It was still only a casual play at a friend's house or something like that. I never played any of the other games in the series either. I didn't even know there was a Doom 64 until doing research of this video. And I'd barely heard of Doom 3, but from what little I did, I'm guessing the impressions of said game wasn't exactly great. Doing further research, it seems there are people who like Doom 3 and defend it, but it was polarized a lot from bad to good. Wait, wouldn't Doom 3 actually be the fourth game in the series? Weird naming conventions never help anything. Regardless, Bethesda decided to reboot the franchise, and this released Doom, the fifth game in the series. Oh man. We are going to refer to this as Doom 2016, and that's what we're reviewing here. The original Doom left a huge legacy, and while the other FPSs have improved the series, Doom was probably the most revolutionary, given Wolfenstein 3D released first, but Doom was far more popular and cemented the FPS genre in gamers' minds. For better or worse. Doom is the biggest reason people bring up violent video games and school shootings. The Columbine Massacre is a horrible event that happened and was inspired by the original Doom. Because of this, violence in video games has been a hot debate for a long time, and I'm not here to necessarily talk about that. My job is to review games, but Doom's history can't be fully ignored either. Regardless, it is time to dive into the gates of hell and kill pretty much any demon dumb enough to be anywhere nearby. Let's take on the Spider Mastermind! So, the plot to Doom 2016 is this. Doom Guy, or Doom Slayer, I prefer Doom Slayer, but I go by Doom Guy as well, wakes up on Mars. He was found in a coffin in hell, and his robot guy named Samuel retrieved him. Turns out Dr. Samuel Hayden wanted to use Doomslayer as a backup plan in case his employee, named Olivia Pierce, went a little off the rocker. And she does. Olivia becomes obsessive with demons and eventually worships them, allowing them to invade Mars and the facility they're all on, run by a company called UAC. Doomslayer's job is basically to do things in order to stop an entire portal of hell from being opened up. However, it is opened up anyway and eventually has to return from hell to do more things to close the portal, including several return trips to hell. So if you couldn't tell, the story is one big fetch quest for Doomslayer to close this portal to hell. It is super simple to the point of non-existent, and while I don't mind writing like this, I don't think it's super great here. The main plot keeps you going, giving you reasons for what you're doing, but character dialogue is lacking. Samuel is interesting, but you can tell he is the intelligent type who knows more than he lets on, and, you know, he's intelligent, reasonable, blah blah blah. Olivia is literally there to move the plot forward. She is shocked that the demons betrayed her in the end, like, oh yeah, evil creatures being evil is just shocking, I guess. Olivia is a researcher. What made her think this was a good idea is just beyond me. Knowing damn well the demons are invaders and incredibly dangerous, she figures she will trust them based on their word? Really? There should be more to this, but you barely ever actually see her. Other than a clip of the past here and there and a few interactions with her, this is just straight up lacking. Also, you don't kill her directly. She ends up fusing with the final boss and dies with it. Even the final boss seems to have little to speak of. Unfortunately, Doomslayer is a silent protagonist, and while that's fine, Sammy Boy and Pierce don't necessarily make up for Doomslayer's missing dialogue. While they are interesting characters, they're not interesting enough to, you know, help the writing out in any way, shape, or form. Vega, the computer-programmed AI, is definitely slightly more interesting and has more dialogue, but he's also not interesting enough either to bring the writing up, although Doomslayer backs up Vega at some point in the game. There is, of course, more to these characters, however. Yeah, unfortunately, any actual writing effort went into the vague but book-length secret information pieces you find around the game. These secrets improve the lack of character writing and story in the main game, but if you don't take the time to read or even find these, the game is incredibly lacking and left me wanting way more than what was delivered. I at least knew why I was here during the missions though, so I guess it kinda worked. So while on these missions to fetch whatever and kill every demon in your wake, what's the charm to the area? Well, one thing Doom is known for, it's the music that pumps you up for, demon slaying. This game doesn't let you down. Each mission has different music and it works well with the atmosphere of the game. The levels are dynamic and despite only being on Mars or Hell, each mission has a unique look. The demons also look fantastic, as ugly as they are, and glory kills are as gory as ever. Sound effects make things even more rewarding to the player, and while not enough was actually said, the voice acting was pretty decent in my opinion. The cool part is that these demons are perfect 3D renditions of the demons from the original Doom. Hell, Spider Mastermind was the final boss of the original Doom, so yeah, the game looks fantastic because of this. Designs to the characters were pretty good, Samuel towering over Doomslayer and Olivia looking creepy while still seeming semi-human. This game has a nostalgic feel to it for those who played Doom back in the day, and that kind of thing is always appreciated. Especially when you're killing demons in a very metal and gory fashion. So, when it comes to Doom, I couldn't really tell you much about the gameplay of any of the other games. It has been a long time since I've played Doom, the original, and while that may change in the future, at the time of writing this review, I don't remember much. However, this game is fast, action-packed, gory, and each gun has a reason to exist. Basically, you explore in a first-person view, meaning you see everything Doomslayer sees. You explore each area in his shoes and basically fight demons. You can crouch, throw a grenade or hologram when you have them, and shoot guns. There are also a few specific buttons for a few specific weapons. For example, the chainsaw or the BFG, which also have their own uses. I won't go over every weapon, but some are automatic and some I use more often for close-range combat, like the super shotgun. The chainsaw is for close-range kills and securing ammo for your gun. The BFG is basically a screen nuke, or rather kills nearly anything in front of you, as long as you halfway aim. Boss characters also take heavy damage from BFG ammo. You use what works for you. I typically fought things with the super shotgun until I knew the area better. Bigger threats are these flying testes. I'd use the Gauss rifle. I hate these flying heads, if I'm to be honest. Then for demons that are basically mini-boss fights, I'd bring out the BFG to vaporize them quickly. In a particularly difficult room, or when I ran out of ammo for one of these particular guns, I'd end up bringing out the chain gun. Just this huge, mowing down everything kind of weapon. You can also sometimes find power-ups, which means for a limited amount of time you can either one-shot everything, move faster, or have extra power in each shot of your gun. When a foe is particularly weak, they may flash colors. Use a melee attack nearby will glory kill them, a flashy death animation with some extra health for you. Doomslayer has a health bar and an armor bar. You can find armor like health, making him basically harder to kill. Speaking of hard to kill, while it looks like Doomslayer would be slower, he's actually very quick on his feet, able to jump and dodge a variety of attacks. The gameplay is fast and can be frantic, but nothing struck me as unfair. Once I knew what I was up against, I typically destroyed everything after a try or two. Let me sing you a song on how the gameplay makes me feel. For assurance of my enjoyment of this game. Let's get down to business and mow down everyone. Did they send me bitches when I asked for demons? You're the saddest bunch I've ever met, but you can bet before we're through. Yes, I'll carve my name into you. Tinder for the burning, your bones will make. Heed my every warning and die in my wake. You're all built for the rage of war, and yet I still break through. That's why I'll carve my name into you. Ah, Disney parodies. Regardless, the gameplay is easily the best part of this game, which is a pleasure to say and gush over. However, the level design housing the gameplay is one of the low points. Not the worst point, that's still the writing. Still, the level design is a far cry from what it should be. I'm not saying every mission is bad, but there are a lot of levels with very similar setups. You walk through a hallway or a linear clearing, maybe find a secret, and then enter a very spacious room with tons of demons to fight. It gets to be predictable on when you're going to experience a war zone. Not that there aren't cool set pieces to play on. It just gets so predictable and can get old very quickly. Even I noticed how repetitious some of these levels got, and I'm pretty forgiving about that kind of thing. Not all the levels are like this, however. Some levels are more open to exploration where you're finding objectives rather than going from room to room. These are admittedly pretty fun. From a furnace of fun to Vega's brain, these levels are typically more open-ended on how to deal with threats, and are more entertaining for sure. Luckily, there are enemies to fight, which helps bring up some of the flaws. The game likes to introduce enemies until late into the game. Most, if not all, enemies in the game have unique methods to deal with them, allowing for weapon experimentation. Although all enemies can die to the super shotgun, if I'm to be honest. Still, some enemies are better to take out long range, and some are easier to deal with close up if you're careful. However, this only works when the game is introducing newer enemies. While even the variant versions of enemies are interesting, this stops happening towards the end of the game. Different battle setups with these enemies can only take you so far. This is my way of saying the last, about 3 missions basically spice things up by just throwing more of these enemies your way. This makes the last couple of levels more repetitious, which is about when I started noticing the issue. Not gonna lie, this issue doesn't bug me like it does other people, but these last 3 levels even I noticed the problem. Really big issue. Now if we were to have more boss fights, maybe I wouldn't complain as much? Yeah, the boss fights in FPS, a recipe for disaster, right? Well, not exactly. These boss fights are actually not very terrible, which is unusual, but I guess it happens. The Cyber Demon was a pain and late into the game for the first boss fight. A friend told me about his second stage, so I didn't use up all my BFG ammo in the first phase. Totally didn't need to learn that by experience, and totally wasn't left with 1 round of it in the more difficult second phase. Yeah. I hear it is possible to beat the boss like this. Totally. I also hear if you can beat the Cyber Demon like this, you have the makings to be a badass review YouTuber for gaming, but that's just a rumor. Ugh, damn Cyber Demon. Anyway, the Guardian boss fight is completely different. Similar for sure, but different attacks, methods, and it ends up being 2 of them in Phase 2. And lastly, the Spider Mastermind, which, is fun, but honestly less complicated to deal with than the first 2 bosses, and the only one with 1 phase, making it kind of easier to kill in a way. It was fun crushing these bosses, and not all the levels are super repetitious, but there are enough hallway simulator levels to be noticeable, even when the ever-expanding enemy list that wasn't ever-expanding. At least killing the demons is super fun with the great gameplay. So you'd probably think with hallway linear level design there wouldn't be that many secrets, right? Ha! Not even close. The only real issue with playing the game to unlock everything is some of the levels aren't designed to work well with hidden collectibles. Since the stage is linear, sometimes you can't backtrack in the level all that well. Still, that goes into the level design issue that, so far, I've beat a dead demon with. The collectibles aren't exactly at fault here. Not only can you find weapons and ammo by simple exploration, you can also find other hidden goodies too. Action figures allow you to view character and weapon models in the main menu. Data drives actually bring out good writing. Yeah, so there is actually a ton of lore and story in this game, but it isn't the story you're playing. If you want background data on characters like Hayden or Doomslayer, then you have to find these data drives. Killing demons, the normal day-to-day for Doomslayer. I don't mind adding lore and writing in this method, but I don't agree with gutting the main story to give more prominence to optional collectibles. Oh well, I digress. You can find Terminal in the level to fill up your map, and it helps find more collectibles, so that's helpful. You can also find hidden switches leading to secret rooms. These rooms look very retro in graphics, and unlocks a secret mission that emulates a level from Doom or Doom 2. I say emulate these missions because you're basically using the current gameplay engine. They just recreate the levels using retro graphics for everything, but you and the demons function basically in the current gameplay, not the retro gameplay. Regardless, these are incredibly fun to find, and they up the total level count that you can play in, which isn't a bad thing at all. Lastly, any other optional collectible upgrades, things like Doomslayer's suit and weapons. You can get optional gear to add to your guns and suit upgrades. Some upgrades also boost health, ammo, or armor. Exploration is very useful. Eventually you get a double jump of swords, which can help gather some trickier collectibles, but due to the level design, it is rare you'll ever need this thing, and even if you are paying attention, most secrets are easy enough to, come across in the linear stages. Again, this goes back to the level design issue, but still, collectibles are so good that it almost makes up for it, and I highly recommend going after them if you do end up playing the game. Also, if you pretty much mow down every demon, you can even upgrade your weapon upgrades. Good luck hunting! So, as I give my overall opinion, there's something to keep in mind. I'm only reviewing the single player part of this game. There is an expansive multiplayer option here too, and I hear there's still a thriving community on this game to date, though that may change with Doom Eternal being released. If you are more multiplayer oriented, this game may be better for you in that regard. I'm a single player kind of guy, and overall, I still had a lot of fun with this game. Looking at the campaign critically though, I'd probably have to give the game a 7 out of 10 for recommendation. The game is good and solid for sure, and I recommend it if you are interested, but there are some issues. If you're looking into an interesting story, you will need to collect some of the secrets, or this game will get dull really fast when it comes to the writing aspect. The level design is sometimes flawed, with some levels being exploration and open, while other levels are just hallways with one battle room to the next, with a few secrets here and there littering the hallways. Outside of that though, Doom hits all the marks it needed to. While I'm no expert at FPS, the gameplay is what drew me in. Fast, frantic, and really fun. Unique tactics and unique enemies also help a lot and makes the levels a bit more varied, thankfully. Also, there's a ton of charm in music and backdrop to the stage. The collectibles are really good. This gives people who don't like harder difficulties something to search for in each level, but the harder difficulties are there if the game isn't challenging enough for most people. Finding collectibles improves Doomslayer, weapons, writing, adds retro design missions, and unlocks model viewers for enemies, characters, and weapons. What this game stumbles on, it stumbles hard. But what the game gets right, it does so well, I feel it more than makes up for it. But that's all the time I have for this review. If everything goes right, the next review will be River City Girls. My script actually has Ocarina of Time. Ha! 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 No, it's most likely going to be River City Girls. I finished it with my friend. I'm writing the script. That's going to be next. Ocarina of Time should be after that. Unless I finish Final Fantasy VI quicker than I thought. Regardless, I'll see you next time, my minions. Assuming you hit the subscribe button and bell icon, that is. Bye-bye. Warning. Spoilers. Warning. You know, I knew eventually I'd be facing off against a WayForward game. I didn't know this would be my first one. Although some of you may point out that this isn't technically my first WayForward game. Yeah, they were one of the many developers that helped out with Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night. They weren't the main developers per se, but they helped out. WayForward is one of the most well-known indie developers out there, so it makes sense that they'd help out with a project like that. Hell, this game is also with another company, Arc Systems Works. These guys are an interesting bunch, known to us here in the States mostly through BlazBlue and Guilty Gear fighting games. These guys, however, are ones who also ported Double Dragon to the Sega Master System, which is Sega's 8-bit console for those of you who don't know. But why is that important? Well, the company that created Double Dragon also created a series of mostly Japanese exclusive games called the Kunio-kun series. Brawlers very similar to Double Dragon in many ways. Since Double Dragon was mostly seen here in the West, while Kunio-kun was a series mostly seen in the East, it could be stated that they are kind of the same series, just one built for an American audience and one built for a Japanese audience. Not that Kunio-kun didn't show up here in the West, mostly known as the River City series here. And that's where it all comes together. Yes, River City. This game is literally a part of the Kunio-kun series of games. But why did the original developers allow this game to be made? Trying to break into an American audience again? Well, kind of, but kind of not. The original developers of Double Dragon and Kunio-kun actually went bankrupt. And the ones who bought all the copyrights to the characters? That company worked on the Double Dragon port for the Master System so long ago. Arc Systems Works. So my question is, why weren't any of these characters in Cross-Tag? What the hell? Regardless, this isn't exactly like Kunio-kun games either. Rather, we're playing the female characters looking for the popular male characters such as Kunio and Ricky, rather than them looking for their girlfriends. We are doing the female protagonist thing this time around, and this is what gathered my attention. Given I do follow WayForward anyway, but having a sillier presentation, more anime style, very stylized by the way, and badass female protagonist, I was interested from this from day one. I wasn't the only one among my friends, so yeah, I played the entire game co-op, but if you're wondering if I'll be joined in this review, not quite yet. He doesn't have his profiles in Twitch set up quite yet, but when he does, I'll be plugging his profile probably everywhere. Regardless, it is time I get to the review at this point. I'll have to search the entire city, and need be, I'll tear it down. I'm on the hunt to find my boyfriend. Let's take on River City! So, let's get one thing straight. I love the writing of this game. However, my scores aren't based on how much I actually love the writing myself. I say that because the entire script is humor. Humor is incredibly subjective, and this could cause some issues. I do feel most of the jokes land rather well, but the main joke of the game doesn't seem to hit everyone. Yeah, I'm jumping right into the end here, but the biggest joke is that the main characters, Misako and Koyoko, I'm sorry if I butcher anybody's name here, are incredibly clingy. They are in love and will do anything to get their boyfriends back, but they seem to be so in a very unhealthy manner. What's worse is at the end of the game, their so-called boyfriends don't even remember them. Yeah, as stated by a hidden boss, these two girls are so damn obscure no one remembers them at all. Only dating the boys in one 16-bit game. So, here's the issue. The reason they claim to have everyone beaten up and how powerful they actually are, because, I mean, they fight some really powerful bosses here, is through the power of love. Oops. That means the power of their clingy love is literally one-sided. So much for that power. They could have introduced really quickly the idea of their friendship being the true power of love, not even in a romantic way, although I'm sure plenty of people wouldn't mind having it go that way. But if they wanted to, they could have kept it to strictly love of friendship, and this would have landed quite a bit better. No, sadly the game ends on that joke. The guys call the girls crazy and suggest seeing their actual girlfriends with the heroes punching the two boys out of the building, followed by credits. Still, most of the other humorous moments are funny enough. The game certainly tries to not take itself too seriously, and this is probably a good thing, given the redesigns for many of the characters from the Kunio-kun series. The humor of the rest of the game does seem to parody beat-em-up plots, and plenty of other games, with the main characters questioning why everyone in their city has always been trying to fight other people, or other characters commenting on how the girls aren't exactly dressed fashionably. These jokes are quick and relatable, allowing them to either hit their mark, or at least not outlast their welcome if they miss. Hell, some of the gags are even visual. See this woman with her six-pack? She's well known for getting punched in the gut. Yeah, not only are there a ton of callbacks to the Kunio-kun series, there are actually a large amount of cameos from Double Dragons, including villains, damsels as previously mentioned, and the brothers themselves. There are also cameos from other YouTubers. Yeah, this guy here running side quests sounds like Jacksepticeye because, well, that's who voices him. There's also a few Game Grump voices here as well. There's this other YouTuber called Nate Wants to Battle, a more musically inclined YouTuber, sings the end credit song. Love your voice in Big Bad Bosses, my dude. You will be missed as the not Sephiroth of the band. But let's get into the music. This soundtrack is actually really dang good. Most of the music is sung by the voice actors of this rock character named Noise. Good singing, honestly. Speaking of which, yeah, all the characters, even shopkeepers, are voiced in this game. And it's pretty decent stuff. People more familiar with him mic than me, for sure. Can I also mention the art style? Oh man, the art style of this game is so damn good. It has a manga feel not unlike Mad World, but this art style seems to be a mix of both Eastern and Western influence, and I adore it if I'm honest. Hell, even the characters you're beating up through the city pop out as unique designs and color palettes. Speaking of, the way you beat up people is really simple. It's a beat 'em up, right? You have a light attack that is quicker, a strong attack that stuns opponents, and a special attack. The more variations you learn, the easier it is to mess people up. While the attacks all feel similar for both characters, the variations help when things get a little frantic. You can also run, jump, and block attacks. The levels are open to exploration and backtracking if you desire. And there are some RPG elements. Yeah, weird. You can equip gear for added attack power and perks, like some health items to eat, and you gain experience and money to buy gear from beating the crap out of thugs. There are a few times platforming came about, and while awkward to make some jumps, nothing hindered us too badly. The biggest issue is depth perception. It's kind of difficult to figure out where you're at sometimes while moving on the vertical plane. There were plenty of times where we swung at foes and just flat out missed the mark. Like, yeah, we thought we were right on top of them. This doesn't make the game unplayable, but it was a constant issue. The best way to judge your location is by drop shadow. It's not perfect, but nothing else in the gameplay wise gives us grief. As long as the level design keeps the awkward jumping and running in mind, we should be golden, right? And it actually does. Nothing was too taxing to figure out or accomplish that the game asked for on the main playthrough. We were able to find our way through each location and find the boss fight. The only enemy to give us real shit was the cheerleaders who can dodge attacks, and these Terminator wannabes who are damage sponges and can dish it out just as well. Outside of them and maybe a cop or two, nothing really stood a chance as long as we kept an eye on our health. Each location is varied enough for us to easily find our way around without too much hassle, and no set piece outstayed its welcome. The boss fights are also unique. From a kid with psychic powers to a spider fashion designer to Guitar Hero itself, none of these bosses were bad, although it was easy to take hits from Noise that seemed kind of cheap. Still, nothing gave us too much hell once we got used to the boss's patterns. That's right, old school style beat 'em up boss patterns. Great! Even the final boss, which was a challenge for sure, we still beat in one try. Oh shit. Okay, this is our second try, but a game crash doesn't count. Only time this ever happened too, strangely enough. Guess we weren't allowed to beat the final boss in one shot. However, there is an optional boss to deal with, isn't there? Before we get to that though, let's talk about the actual side quests. Yeah, you can do side quests, and there are a few secret items you can buy to make your journey a little easier. Doing side quests for this Irish sounding character that looks highly Japanese, you can get some gear and money for your characters. Each character has slightly different moves, and you can buy these moves to help out depending on your level. When you beat the game, you gain 2 new playable characters, so if the gameplay and story don't get you there, maybe playing as Ricky and Kunio will. They're fun, but they start back at level 1, which is kinda rough. However, after beating the game, and if you find and break all of these statues, you can face a secret boss fight. Yeah, these girls who are seen in every level talking shit are the secret boss fights. They're unique like all the other boss fights, and they're really fun. True final challenge. First try and we destroy them. Excellent. The ending is still the same, but the boss fights are awesome in this game, so we did enjoy our campaign here. The dialogue beforehand is funny too, so there is that. Last, you can collect bad guys. Yeah, if you wreck everyone but one guy in a room, and the last foe may ask for mercy. Show it, and they'll tag along for a while for an extra attack. We rarely use these, but it is nice. You can collect them all, which only fills out a profile page for all these guys. It doesn't do anything but check a mark on the completionist list, though. It allows you to wrap up the game, I suppose? Actually, I should probably start wrapping this up myself, too. This game is really simple, but it is exactly long, making this kind of a short ride. The plot and writing are humorous, but can be very subjective due to this, causing the ending and the final joke some possible issues. The charm, however, makes up for this with fantastic art, music, YouTube cameos, Double Dragon cameos. The gameplay is simple to pick up, but more challenging to master, making the unique levels and the distinct boss fights very rewarding to play through. The secret boss fights are nice, side quests get you things that help the adventure, and beating the game gets you new characters, although not every side activity is so rewarding. Honestly, if you like this genre, I'd say you should really try River City Girls. I highly recommend it. Guessing 9 out of 10 players will absolutely love this game. However, I'm not an expert on beat-em-ups either, so what do I know? Go play the game. And that's all the time we have for this review. Next time I'll indeed be reviewing Ocarina of Time. But the next time we see Way Forward again will most likely be the Shantae series. I'm not going to necessarily hold my breath, but I do have all of the series, so eventually we'll get to that. See you all later, and stay safe out there, minions. Bye-bye. Ah, yes. The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. One of, if not the most popular game on the planet. Often considered to be not only the best Zelda game of all time, but the best game entirely of all time. I, however, will disagree with this mentality. I have a huge difference in opinion on that subject matter. Maybe I'll do a video on it one day. However, I need to discuss where I stand on this game, Ocarina of Time. Look, Ocarina of Time is my first Legend of Zelda game. I used to think Zelda was the main character and that it was a girl's game. You know, had to avoid cooties as a kid. However, one of my cousins showed me this game, and after realizing the main character is a boy named Link, I fell in love with the graphics and the atmosphere. I mean, some of the N64 graphics look dated now, but the N64 game still holds up. However, you are actually seeing 3DS footage. Yeah, this game was remade with some updated graphics and some gameplay issues fixed, so that's the version I'll be playing. Is it the better version? Well, yeah. Despite everything, despite how many times I've played the original version, even I have to admit that this is probably the best version of the game. However, it would also probably be shocking to hear that this isn't my favorite game in the series. No, it is in my top 3 of 3D Zelda games, at number 3. So hopefully I'll give a fair and honest review about the subject. I know it's kind of weird because, you know, everyone's like, oh, your first Zelda game is going to be your favorite Zelda game, and that's actually not the case this time around. And what a subject, too. Seriously, not only is it a super popular game, But the development of this game is very interesting. From a possible Super Mario 64 clone to what we saw in promotional material leading up to the release, this game went through some huge redesigns. But I suppose that's enough build-up for one day. People will either love or hate what I'm about to say here. So, here we are. This is the first time Ganon's human form, the infamous Ganondorf, showed his face. So, that's what we're about this time around. Let's take on Ganondorf! So, the story starts up and Link is asleep. A running theme by this point. Regardless, a fairy visits Link, waking him up, and off to see the Great Deku Tree, the guardian of the forest. Okay, we need a sword and a shield first, but we don't need every detail. Link kills off a curse inside the Great Deku Tree, but the old tree dies anyway, telling Link to go see Zelda, the Princess of Hyrule. Link makes his way to the castle and meets the young princess, and is sent on a quest for these 3 gems. Well, 2 of them anyway. The Great Deku Tree gave Link the first one before dying. Before parting, though, Link is shown the big bad Ganondorf himself. You know, so we know he's evil because the king can't just look at the guy and tell that this dude is evil. Seriously, look at the guy. Regardless, Link finds Gorons who have had their entire food source sealed by Ganondorf. And since Link saved the day and the king ignored the Gorons' plight for help, Link gets the Stone of Fire. And after finding Zora's, Link helps save the Zora princess from inside a fish named Jabu Jabu, and gets her stone too. Link returns to Castletown to find that Ganondorf attacked the king and was chasing after Zelda, but Zelda left Link one final key, the Ocarina of Time. Roll credits, please! Oh wait, we're not done yet. Link manages to learn how to open the sealed door in the Temple of Time, and use the Master Sword to enter the Sacred Realm. But Link technically and apparently is not old enough to be the hero of time yet, so he is sealed away. And that leaves Ganondorf to gain the Triforce and take over the world. Why? Because Link didn't close the damn door behind him. Jeez, was the kid raised in a tree or something? Oh wait, yeah, he was. Regardless, Ganondorf ended up taking over all of Hyrule because their security system with the most powerful item in the world was a one-shot broken by a 10-year-old. Great. Anyway, Link is transported into the future where Ganondorf's evil is law. Now Link sinks to return to the past to... Wait, wrong series. Link finds himself with a shady character named Sheik, who tells him crap went down after 7 years Link went missing. This is where the main story takes a back seat to show how messed up the world is. Link's old home is riddled with monsters. The Gorons are stuck in the Fire Temple, about to be eaten. Even the Zoras are all frozen under a solid brick of ice. During this, Link is trying to free specific characters that awaken as new protectors of these areas, so Link can not only save each area, but use their combined powers to make a very simple rainbow bridge. Link also has to travel back and forth between time to unlock a few more stories in previously unexplored desert and the bottom of a well. After all this and freeing the people of Hyrule, Sheik is revealed to be Zelda. And this proves that Zelda is far better than Princess Peach, because Zelda is a freaking ninja. End of discussion forever. However, Ganondorf does find this out and kidnaps Princess Zelda at the last possible minute. Oops. Turns out when the Triforce is used in an evil way, it splits up like the Dragon Balls, and part of the Triforce is in Zelda. What Ganondorf didn't seem to expect was part of it was also in Link this entire time. While Ganondorf intended to use Link to find Zelda, he didn't expect Link to basically free Hyrule as a one-man army, so, oops. Regardless, this time he has Zelda and wants Link to come to save her, so the sages make their little rainbow bridge, and Link enters the final dungeon. After the treacherous last journey, Link and Ganondorf battle to complete the Triforce. Ganondorf is defeated and tries to topple his entire castle onto Zelda and Link. But thanks to Zelda being far more useful than Princess Peach with magic, and Link able to slay whatever crops up, the two escape in time. And they somehow manage to survive the powerful explosions of an imploding castle while about roughly 2 feet away. Huh. I know Zelda's powerful and both people have the Triforce pieces, but... Actually, it turns out Ganondorf somehow survived this too, despite using his dying breath to collapse the castle, and suddenly... No, he just survives and transforms into Big Ganon, the Beast of Power. Fun fact, if you lose this fight, you start a whole nother timeline that keeps Ganondorf permanently stuck in this form. So, cool. Regardless, when you do actually defeat him, he turns back into Ganondorf, somehow still alive, and is sealed away in the never-seen Sacred Realm by the sages. Zelda then decides to create a third timeline and send your ass back in time so you can stop Ganondorf of the past. Navi suddenly yeets out of the plot at this moment, and Link goes to talk to Zelda as the credits roll. So I suppose the biggest answer is the writing any good? The answer is, yes and no. You guys ever played Link to the Past? The first half of Link getting the stones to open his way to the Master Sword was ripped directly out of that game. It isn't the only time something like this happens in the series, but still. You also travel to another world. In Link to the Past, it was the Dark World, here it's the future. Outside of that, there are a few plot holes of Ganondorf just never dying, and the world being taken over because the protection of the Triforce, the wish-granting device, not resetting while they sealed Link away so he could be old enough to stop Ganondorf? That's bullshit! Link from Wind Waker is also young, and he manages to stop Ganondorf just fine. Also, dialogue outside the main quest is once again lacking, probably due to the hardware limits, but not all the side characters are exactly dull. The sages are often people you encounter throughout your journey while young Link, and they have plenty of characterization to make you care when those characters end up being in trouble in their own respective temples. Examples are Impa, Darunia, the Princess Ratu, all the sages eventually, and all good characters. The characters from the Lone One Ranch are also characterized and sympathetic as well. Given Talon is lazy and hell, but once you save him and his ranch, he grows as a character, and he's working hard afterwards. It is important side quests after all. But most of the other side characters, or other characters at all, don't have much in the way other than one-dimension personalities. It isn't exactly bad writing, but it's just dated. That's the main issue, I think. Mostly by Majora's Mask, another Zelda game, on the N64. Now those side characters have great writing. Meanwhile, the main story takes far too many elements from Link to the Past and has a tell, don't show mentality, and, you know, the few plot holes. Serviceable, but could easily have been better. Okay. Yes, they borrowed a lot of the writing from Link to the Past, but surely the music must be completely original, right? Actually, no. A lot of these songs are also from that game. They really wanted players to feel comfortable during a new 3D experience. Jeez Louise. However, thankfully, the sound quality with the N64 was upscaled. These songs sound fantastic, regardless of the lack of originality. However, my favorite songs are actually new. Gerudo Valley, Song of Storms, and Saria's song, all to my recollection, are original to this game, and they are fantastic. Also, for an N64 title, Ocarina of Time looked great, and refined on the 3DS, this game looks fantastic. Although, some things don't look quite as natural as they probably should, and still look really blocky, even with the upscaled graphics. Regardless, this doesn't happen enough to break my immersion. This game setting looked amazing back in the day, and it killed any negative ideas I had about the game as a kid, so there you go. This game keeps the sense of adventure alive, and while not the biggest adventure anymore, for a game back in there, this was amazing. But it's time to talk about the most important thing of most video games, the gameplay. The gameplay is the revolutionary part of this game. It is considered to be one of the first that uses a targeting system for 3D adventure games. Whenever there is an enemy nearby, you can use Navi to target your foes, making combat easier. Though you don't actually have to use this at all to beat the game. Trust me, I've done it. When I was a kid, I didn't understand the purpose of this, and I didn't read too much text in the game. Oops. So, yeah, I basically ended up beating the entire game grueling, very grueling, with no Z targeting whatsoever. But it was possible back then, it's still possible today. Regardless, the Z targeting makes it very simple to strike enemies in a 3D setting, and this was considered very groundbreaking back in the day. As stated, you can attack without it. It's just there to help you. You have basic sword swings when you gain a sword, but targeting allows for some stronger and fancier moves, hence why I kill bosses super quickly. I know the jump strike does the most damage. You have other tools too, though. A shield that can block oncoming attacks if you're caught off guard, or for reflecting certain beams when you gain the mirror shield. A long-range weapon for offense and puzzle solving, and a retractable weapon that stuns enemies and is more used for said puzzles. There are a bunch of tools that are used for puzzle solving or exploration. Eventually, as young Link, you gain, for the most part, very basic equipment. But Adult Link gains some more interesting toys like different clothes allowing you to survive heat, or more usefully, breathe underwater. Adult Link also gains boots that allow you to sink in water or hover boots for crossing long distances. In the classic N64 game, to switch these boots on and off, you had to use the options menu. But in the 3DS remake, this game makes them an item, allowing for super quick and easy removal or usage. This is especially useful in one dungeon, which I'll bring up later. Other items range from bottles, which can hold healing supplies like fairies, which revive you after death, or a lens allowing you to see through illusionary magic. All of these items have their uses, but some are basically situational and only useful in one dungeon, for a select few side quests maybe. Still, there's a lot of variation here, making Link set up for an adventure, and all of these are fun to play with. Many of these items appear in almost every 3D Zelda game. I guess if it isn't broke, am I right? Yeah. Speaking of if it ain't broke, the side areas and the dungeons are really great. Honestly, I love the Forest Temple and inside Jabba Jabba's belly. Even some of the smaller dungeons are great in design, like the bottom of the well or the ice cavern. The puzzles aren't too taxing though, and you could almost call the game too easy up until the Water Temple. Yeah, the Water Temple. I don't actually mind the Water Temple as much as some people. Playing based on memory, I actually blew through the entire temple a while back, outside of one of the keys that I missed and had backtracked for, which is admittedly annoying. Backtracking this dungeon is not exactly fun. The biggest reason this temple was terrible is because of the iron boots. You need them to sink in water, and you often had to take them on and off, pull them, up and down all the damn time, which meant pausing the game constantly, breaking any type of pacing this freaking temple had. With the iron boots as an item, you map it to a button rather than something like the tunics in the equipment category. This makes taking them off and putting them on really quick, allowing for less breaks of immersion. The Water Temple does look very similar room to room though, making it easy to get lost for newcomers, which is still an issue, I suppose. The Hyrule Field is also an issue. Huge, open hub level with nothing to do in it. Not exactly a good mix. When you are an adult Link, you can ride a horse, after dealing with a side quest. There's also a side quest where you hunt big Poes in this area, and you can get a bottle for that. But this is still few and far between in the massive hub. Everything else works fine outside of super simple torch puzzles, block puzzles, which occur a bit much and can break the immersion. There are too many block puzzles which are just slow as hell. The levels aren't bad with some interesting puzzles and amazing set pieces, but the slower ordinary puzzles pop out a lot. It's a little too much. Just gonna say that right now. However, when talking about level design, this is also where I kind of have to dip into the secrets and side quest category, and bring up Master Quest. See, there was supposed to be an add-on feature for the N64 that added discs to the console, and this could upgrade certain games. While the attachment failed financially, they did make one of these upgrades to a game. This is Master Quest, a version of Ocarina of Time with far more challenging dungeons. And while it wasn't able to come out on the disk drive of the N64 here in the States due to the financial disaster it was, eventually Nintendo did actually release it. It was a pre-order bonus for Wind Waker on the GameCube, the next Zelda game I'll be talking about. I still have a copy of this actually, and for a while, this was the only way to play the more challenging dungeons. Until it was remade for the 3DS. Yes, beat the game and you unlock Master Quest mode. This is the mode I ended up playing for this run, to be honest. Most of the dungeons are far more original and interesting puzzle-wise. Even the block puzzles make you stop and consider your surroundings. Also, unlike the GameCube release, they flipped the entire world map, which can be slightly disorienting for longtime fans. Also, enemies hit harder in the 3DS version. It's basically a really nice hard mode. The only real issue I have with Master Quest is that the Water Temple is now more complex, and the Spirit Temple, one of the better designs in the original game, is far more annoying and aggravating here. Still, this makes the 3DS version way better than the original game by a long shot, and slightly better than the GameCube re-release. But even the original game has plenty of side content. Getting Epona, the horse, finding bottles, which is useful for holding healing items, and the best sword in the game is gained through a large trading chain side quest. You also have health upgrades in the form of heart pieces, upgrades to ammo counts by playing minigames or finding this rolling Goron and stopping him with bombs. Lastly, there's the gold Skulltulas. They're these common enemies called Skulltulas on walls that are kind of an annoying obstacle. They're basically a cross between a skull and a tarantula. However, there's also this gold variation of this enemy that when they die, you get a token from. Sometimes you need a specific tool like a boomerang or a hookshot to get said token, but collecting them is important. Kind of. In Kakariko Village, there's a rundown looking house that has literal spider people in it. No, you don't burn the house down. You're trying to save these people by turning them human. Collect enough tokens and they form back to human beings. You can get 2 wallet upgrades, a stone that helps you find holes in the ground leading to small treasure stashes, bomb chews for some baffling reason, and if you get 50 of them, you get a piece of heart. You get a reward for each 10 tokens you collect, up to 50. But afterwards, you don't get any new reward until you collect all 100 spider tokens. Yeah, there is a lot, and they aren't exactly the easiest things to find. What's your reward for getting all the tokens? Money. The last person you turn back will give you 200 rupees every time you talk to him. Issue is, money is basically useless by the time you can get all these spiders, so I don't recommend it. Get 50 spiders and don't worry too much about the rest. You can also sell masks for a large catch of money too, and you can also get the Mask of Truth, which lets you talk to these gossip stones everywhere. But if you know where to sell the masks, this also kind of seems useless as well. Okay, not all the side quests are super rewarding, but most of them have something going for them. Planting beans lets you get health upgrades as an adult. Minigames often brings ammo upgrades or health as well. Hell, fishing in this place can get you a health upgrade, as well as an item that lets you dive further, which also helps you just get a piece of heart. Oh man. These minigames are actually really fun. Fishing in Zelda would reappear multiple times due to how fun it is. And games like shooting galleries and bomb tube bowling are challenging, but still, overall, pretty fun. Speaking of overall, I think it's about time I wrapped up my opinions on Ocarina of Time. I love Ocarina of Time, but some of the concepts have aged a bit. The story has some plot holes and the level design has some flaws, and some concepts from Link to the Past get shamelessly reused in this game, or, establish basics that other games would follow, blah blah blah. Okay. Still, overall, I think Ocarina of Time is a good game. Not just for newcomers, but for veterans as well. Many people still love this game, and there are reasons for it. Most of the levels and dungeons are fun and can be challenging. The open world is fun to explore, excluding Hyrule Field itself. The gameplay is simple and fun to experience. Honestly, there are plenty of things to find, collect, and minigames for, playing the game. While character dialogue in the story has issues, there's still plenty of world building in this game. There is plenty of charm in the music despite some reused tracks, and the graphics still look really decent for an N64 title, and even better on the 3DS. Overall, I'd give the game an 8 out of 10 for an adventure game. Not the best game in the world, but still respectable. If you haven't played this game, but like 3D adventure games, give it a try. It is a bit dated, but does hold up well for an early N64 title. But that's all the time I have for this review. If you liked it, leave a comment, like, subscribe, keep updated with the bell icon pressed, and the next Zelda game I cover will indeed be Wind Waker. But I may try reviewing another 3D game first. Maybe a 3DS game, I do recall a marathon where I did a large chunk of 3D Mario games, and I think it was on my first season of YouTube. Hey, might want to go check that out. I think it's about time I tackle Attack, the 3DS exclusive 3D Mario game. Until then, take care, my minions. Gosh, I'm getting old for that. Alright, bye-bye! Super Mario 3D Land seems like it would be a sequel of Super Mario Land 2, wouldn't it? No, not this time around. I'll get to the sequel / spin-off of that series later down the road. But for now, we have to tackle this. And this is just called Land due to it being portable. Regardless, during my first season of Sauron Takes On, I actually played many of Mario's 3D games. But I couldn't play all of them. Mostly due to me being unable to record 3DS footage at the time. Well, that isn't a thing anymore. For now. So I'm going on the road again to finish what I started. But I remember when I first heard of this game. The 3DS was the newest thing, but super expensive. Even when the price eventually dropped, it was still a while before I could get one. But the main reason I wanted one was because of this new 3D Mario game that dropped with it. It looked like a mix between 2D Mario games as well as Super Mario Galaxy, and in some ways this is kind of accurate. I had to get it. And then when I finally did, I beat it and never picked it up again. Why is that? Was it a bad game? Well, I have a review to look at. I will say the other main reason I wanted this game was because of the return of one of my favorite power-ups. Yeah, the Tanuki suit made a comeback, which hyped up my nostalgia. So yeah, this Mario game is a 3D game supposed to play like a 2D game, so of course they busted out one of the most iconic power-ups in the NES era. So let's get this review started. Let's take on the Tanuki suit! Before I get too far into recording though, let me say and apologize first off. I kind of blew up my voice a little bit, and I might be a little pitchy at times. My deeper voice is, for the most part, fine, but when I get into a higher pitch, it likes to, get a little squeaky, so just gonna say that now, but let's get onto the writing. You know how Bowser often kidnaps the princess? Princess Peach? Well, that happened. Not the most original plot, but the developers added in some world building by showing off this mysterious tree with a raccoon tail. This tree gives out leaves that transforms Mario into Tanuki Mario. Not only did the storm scatter the leaves everywhere, explaining Mario's ability to find the power-ups, Bowser is also using them. This just gives some enemies some tail attacks, including Bowser, but it's a nice detail nonetheless. Also, there is some character building for Princess Peach here as well. She manages to escape at some point, and Bowser has to chase after her. At least she isn't just sitting on her ass this entire time. The game shows that, given the chance, she will absolutely try and get away from Bowser. Still an absolutely simple story, but the new details are very nice. I also like the way that this story is presented. The 3D images, which look 2D for you guys, sorry about that, but on the 3DS they are indeed 3D. They're a charming way to tell the story. They're absolutely neat because some of the images kind of pop out like it's a pop-up book. I really enjoy it. I also like the way this game looks. The music is pretty decent too, not something too memorable, but not the worst music out there. The backdrops look amazing. It isn't just the way the levels look, but I caught myself staring at the large skyboxes thinking, yeah, you know what? This is pretty. What isn't pretty is Mario's weight problem. Look, I'm normally not one to tease Mario for his gut. I'm not exactly a spry young man anymore, but Mario feels really heavy in this game. I know he's probably getting old too, I can relate to the gut, but normally even Belly Mario can move better than this. Mario is incredibly sluggish in this game. Like the 2D games, he needs a bit of a run before he can jump as high as he used to in the 3D games. There isn't anything impossible, but it makes tighter jumps slightly awkward. If there is a lot on screen, it can become difficult to tell when Mario is in full stride, if he will jump higher and be in the air longer or not. This game isn't exactly difficult because of it, but I'm not comfortable with the controls. You can sort of get used to it, but Mario's issues keep rearing back up. The power-ups, however, make this issue a bit of a joke. The Tanuki Leaf has been seriously downgraded from the past versions. You can't turn into a statue, nor can you fly. You can only hover in the air, not that this doesn't make this power-up utterly broken. Yeah, hovering slowly in the air, even downward, makes almost all the challenge glide right out the window. Meanwhile, Boomerang Mario gives you an unreliable boomerang. The tail attack from the Tanuki suit is more reliable even though it's close range. Why? This thing is difficult to aim due to mostly the fixed camera. You can also only shoot one boomerang at a time and you can't refire until it's destroyed or comes back to you. This makes this thing slow and clunky. Yay! Fire Mario is a better setup. If it wasn't for the ability of the boomerang to collect items, this thing would be absolutely useless. Fire Mario works as well as you could expect. Spamming ranged fireball attacks, destroying anything nearby, it's not bad. Sadly, Mario isn't having the greatest time here. Only 2 power-ups make the gameplay not terrible, and one of them makes Mario almost more frustrating to play. Now, with all that being said, the levels are mostly designed with Mario's sluggish nature in mind. They are super simple and remarkably easy, even when the screen does get a little too busy. Also, enemies are sporting Tanuki tails, which, while interesting, doesn't really change much. Just a few basic habits the enemies have, and allows the enemy a super close range attack now. Boss battles are mostly either Bowser, Boom Boom, or his new girlfriend. Now the way Boom Boom fights never changes. He spins at you and gets in his shell to, shoot at you. His boomerang throwing girlfriend named Pom Pom is basically the same. Throwing boomerangs and actually does a jump attack in her shell, homing in on you, but still a slight tougher version of the Boomerang Bros. The only thing that changes is the stage you fight them on, adding a few more obstacles rather than making them tougher. Unlike Mario Bros. 3, where Boom Boom, and the room both change and both become tougher. Meanwhile, Bowser kind of uses a Tanuki tail in his first fight and gets slightly tougher, the surrounding becoming slightly more difficult to deal with, but oh geez, I'm sorry about that. Look, these levels, there are a few really cool ones, especially with the 3D, but there isn't really much here. The levels are mostly boring ideas that use some gimmick for one level, and instead of adding to that gimmick, they just never use it again. And the gimmicks are really boring ideas. This one has you teleporting around on some platforms that vanish. Spooky. This one has music timed blocks. Neat. This one has you falling forwards towards the flag, showcasing the 3D. Neato, I guess. There's a handful of interesting ones, like this stage taking place between two castle walls as Mario sneaks into the final level. And the final level is a roller coaster, which is really cool. This ghost house has a puzzle of slightly changing rooms, and you have to find and pick the teleporting block leading to the correct room, or it'll lead you to the start of the maze-like level. I wanted more of that, but even most of the castles and airship levels are nothing more than your very typical platforming fare, with one or two slightly challenging areas that are utterly broken Tanuki suit will just fly right over, or simple enough with regular Mario to compromise with his crappy gameplay. If you're looking for some type of satisfaction in beating the game, may I suggest going for everything in a level. Oh, well, crap. Come to find out, my average time in beating a level 100% is about 3 minutes. To do this, you have to collect every single star coin and reach the tippy top of the flagpole at the end of the level. The star coins aren't difficult. Most of them are obviously placed due to needing certain amount of them to actually beat the game. The trickier ones need some power-up or some small amount of fighting the controls to get to. The flagpole jumps, however, unless you can control the controls really well, most times it's, needed a Tanuki suit to access them. None of this gets you anything in the main game, but after you beat Bowser, you gain access to special worlds, with 8 extra, slightly more challenging worlds than before. Some of these are repeat levels with slightly more difficult stipulations, like this music block puzzle, which goes in reverse or just gets faster. Some of these seem original, but most are repeats. Great, more boring ideas. Going through the levels still isn't too bad, even though poison mushrooms return as a basic enemy in power-up boxes. You get a new power-up, by the way, a new stone leaf that grants you a slightly better Tanuki Mario, which turns to stone when ground pounding. You can kill Spinies now! Yay? It doesn't get much use outside of the normal Tanuki power-ups that you had previously, so... oops. The only real cool thing about it is you can also now play as Luigi after a while. Yeah, you unlock Luigi as a playable character in one of these special worlds. And he is fun to speedrun with and is easier to play due to his nicer jumping distance out of the gate. He also turns into a Kitsune instead of a Tanuki. Huh, interesting. A reference to his final Smash and Brawl, perhaps? His purpose in Super Paper Mario, maybe? Difficult to say. Sorry, getting too much Japanese folklore in here. Returning to my home country, you can beat all these stages and beat the game again to get a cute little star at the title screen. You also probably noticed a checklist by this point, keeping track of all the levels you got, all the star coins in, hit the top of the flagpoles, and all the levels you beat as both Mario and Luigi. Beat all the levels as both brothers, collect all the star coins, and hit the tippy top of every flagpole, and you get 1 extra level. Harder than the others for sure. This level is an okay level, slightly tougher, whoop-de-doo, there you go. Padding to the highest degree. And with the level out of the way, let's wrap this up, shall we? So the story, while simple and heard time and again, builds on Princess Peach and is presented in a slightly unique way, which I found very charming. I know, a Mario game being charming isn't exactly, news by any means. Stages look cool and the music is pretty decent. Some of the 3D is used for slight puzzle solving and the design is really cool. That being said, the gameplay is awkward and slow. It is difficult to get used to, similar to my new voice right now. And while some power-ups help, one actively makes things just as bad, if not worse. The level design isn't terrible, but it is bland along with the boss fights, which, seriously, I thought unoriginal boss fights were a thing of the past by this point. And the secrets of games can be accessed by padding in one of the worst kinds, but the harder levels do add a much needed challenge to a very easy game. Overall, it is possibly the worst 3D Mario game of all time. It is getting a 6 out of 10, which is just okay. Still playable, still some good things in the game, you still might enjoy it, but I'd probably recommend plenty of other 3D platformers out there. This game is more boring than anything. Even directly after playing it again, I still can't fully remember most of the levels without really thinking hard about it. I remember the fun ones, but that's such a small threshold of what the game actually has. Still, it is more disappointing than anything. So much potential. Hopefully when I get to my next 3D Mario game, Super Mario 3D World, I won't have as much of an issue. Until then, I have a few other projects and reviews to tackle, so next time, my minions, take care. Bye-bye. The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker, was at one point the most polarizing game in the Zelda series. Now that title belongs to Skyward Sword, a game I've already reviewed. But back in my day, it was Wind Waker. A lot of people, some of which clearly never actually played the game, really didn't like Wind Waker, either due to the more cartoonish cel-shaded art style, or reasons that I'll get into in a bit. Regardless, I absolutely love Wind Waker. I actually like this game more than my first Zelda game, Ocarina of Time. Yes, this is my second favorite Zelda game of all time, so yeah, there's that. Still, there are certainly some issues with the original GameCube release, but I'm not going to play that version. Rather, I'm going to be playing the HD remake, Wind Waker, on the Wii U. I'll talk about the original release, but if you can, get the Wii U version. It is far better and fixes some of the issues of the original. Wind Waker itself was most likely hated due to a tech demo. During the GameCube's release, Nintendo showed a really cool tech demo with Ganondorf and a new spiffy sword that really has only showed up officially in Smash Bros., and Link battling it out in high-quality graphics. Then the actual next Zelda game was showed up, and it was a cute, chibi Wind Waker, and yeah, the American audience had quite the split reaction on it. It was no longer realistic and no longer this cinematic-looking anything, really. It was just Wind Waker. Not that Wind Waker can't look badass, but I'm sure the trailers didn't do it justice. And it isn't like Ganondorf isn't in this game. Yeah, I know, it's kinda... They try and hide this, so it's kinda spoilers, but they kinda don't either. Link sees this mysterious figure, like, at the start of the game, and the boat reveals almost immediately that it's the human form of Ganon. So much for build-up. I guess it is time I face off with this guy again. Let's take on Ganondorf! Round 2! So the story begins with Link sleeping in some neat clothing on a tiny island called Outset Island. He lives there with his sister and grandmother, and today is his birthday. After waking up a little, he gains clothing that replicates some mysterious legend about a hero of time, and then he gets a telescope from his sister. However, things turn sour when a large bird monster is spotted with a young girl in its claws and pirates shooting at said bird. The bird is hit and the girl is dropped into a nearby forest. Link borrows a sword from a local swordmaster and takes off to save the girl. Link slays monsters nearby her and rescues her, but the large bird returns. It accidentally grabs Link's sister instead of the pirate girl named Tetra, and that's where the adventure begins. Link gains a shield and the pirates take him to the bird's nest. Link is shot into the fortress where the bird nests, and due to him losing his sword, Link has to learn how to Solid Snake to save his sister. He does find her, but the bird finds Link and throws him into the seas thanks to its master Ganondorf. Link luckily finds a talking boat that took him east to a city-like island of Windfell. Soon Link buys a sail and off they go. Not to slay the bird, but to gain a weapon that can kill it. Like minigames, Link is tasked with finding 3 gems. One of which some bird people have, one of which a giant tree has, and one of which a large fish has. Yeah, the bird folk are dealing with a dragon being angry for some reason. It's kind of their deity. He gives them scales, helps them fly. The Great Decadry has to do a ceremony to plant trees, and the Fish's Island was destroyed, so he's held up behind a rock on Outside Island, no less. Go figure. Actually, that last one has Link meeting back up with Tetra's pirates, except the pirates aren't home, excluding one particular pirate. And now you can look through Tetra's room and... oh, wow. It seems she's been studying the legends of the Triforce. Interesting. After getting the last pearl, Link raises a huge tower from the ocean, and after dealing with that dungeon, he's sent to the bottom of the sea. This is where Hyrule is buried. In the Temple of Time, Link finds the Master Sword, which unfreezes a ton of enemies nearby. Slay them, and Link leaves back to the surface. Link goes and absolutely ruins the Forsaken Fortress, frees his sister and some other girls with the help of the pirates, and kills the large bird for good. Next, Link squares up against Ganondorf, but come to find out, the Master Sword is dull. With the help of Tetra, some bird people, and their dragon, Link manages to escape. With Tetra joining him this time around, Link travels to beneath the sea again. And that's where your talking boat is revealed to be the former king of Hyrule, and Tetra is revealed to be this game's Princess Zelda with the Triforce of Wisdom. Link leaves Zelda there with the Master Sword, well, where the Master Sword was anyway, so he can return to the surface and find out why the Master Sword is dull. Come to find out, 2 of the sages that were helping keep the Master Sword powered up were killed by Ganondorf's monsters. Link awakens some people he met previously as sages, and with their help, they complete 2 more dungeons and restore the Master Sword. Afterwards, because the game isn't long enough and needs a reference to the first Zelda game, Link must collect all 8 pieces of the Triforce of Courage. This actually does have a story reason. Your boat had a piece of the Triforce of Wisdom, which allowed him to move between worlds, and now that piece is with Zelda. Oops. After doing so, Link returns to Hyrule, and Zelda is kidnapped by Ganondorf. Link breaks a barrier around the castle and heads off to Ganondorf's tower. After some annoying puzzles and a rematch with some 4 previous boss fights, Link enters into a rematch with Phantom Ganon, and also takes on some type of puppet form of Pig Ganon? Yeah, before encountering the real Ganondorf. With all the pieces of the Triforce there, Ganondorf summons all the pieces to make a wish. Turns out he was going to restore Hyrule so he could rule it forever. However, the former king, in the spirit of your boat, beats him to it and sinks Hyrule forever instead. With water gushing in from above, Ganondorf, now pissed, attacks you. But you and Zelda team up and face off against him. After sealing him away once more by stabbing him in the head, the game ends. Link and Tetra take off into the horizon to find a new land, to rename Hyrule and set off on a new quest, from the GameCube to the DS. So, I actually really like the story setup here. Ganondorf is actually trying to justify his actions since the people of Hyrule are limited and stuck on islands now. But he's still pretty evil and needs to be stopped. He still wants to take over, he just wants to rule a larger amount of land, and seems like he could be sympathetic, but ends up still being just as cruel. Also, characters in this game are great. They range from silly, to Tingle, to Tetra, who, while she's a pirate and mischievous, she does mean well at the end of the day. Even smaller characters have enough personality and animations, and text, that most of them are very interesting, even if they aren't as important. The writing in this game is really great and keeps you interested at every turn. Speaking of interesting, when I was younger I didn't care much for the music at first for this game, but anymore, I love it. While this isn't my favorite soundtrack in the series and not something I often listen to per se, when I do hear it, it fills me with a sense of adventure on the new horizon. The art style is also very stylized. It is certainly more cartoonish in nature, but this allows the characters to emote a lot better than the old N64 models for sure. Cartoonish doesn't necessarily bug me because I watch cartoons all the time. Just gonna say that right now. Not that the enemies don't look cool in their own right. Well, most of them. The Bokoblins and Moblins are common enemies. They look okay, but their facial expressions can be just as silly as Link's, if I'm to be honest. Regardless, I still love the art style. It looks better in HD for sure. The open horizon, being able to see islands in the distance is a nice touch. The only Real issue I have with the charm is the pop-in. See, when you enter a new sector of water in the sea, sometimes everything in that sector loads all at once. This takes me out of the action when it happens. It's not the biggest deal, but it is noticeable. Overall, though, the game is trying to invoke a sense of adventure, and has a diverse cast of characters that look about as crazy as they actually are. Thankfully, the gameplay isn't quite as crazy. It's fairly similar to Ocarina of Time in concept, but the combat is fast and can be a bit frantic, but as long as you are patient, nothing will scratch you. Link has a larger set of movements, not unlike Ocarina of Time, just expanded. It isn't too different outside of one move. If your foe is about to attack in a certain manner, Link should be able to hit the action button at the last second to counter, doing massive damage. This is the best way to skewer these fire centipedes and deal with armored foes. It is super satisfying to pull off too. Meanwhile, weapons work well in this game. Bombs are pretty much the same, the hookshot works fine, but some weapons have been upgraded. The boomerang can now hit 5 objects and is super useful for stunning and collecting items. Meanwhile, switching between regular, fire, ice, and light arrows was also made easier with the push of a button rather than having to equip them separately. Luckily, there's also a few new toys to play with as well. The Skull Hammer is just a hammer, and while useful in combat, I find the sword works just fine. Also, the sword is faster, the Skull Hammer is more powerful, but slower, you get the gist. The grappling hook allows you to swing around like Indiana Jones and steal items off of monsters, which is really fun and satisfying too. The boat mechanics are interesting as well. You can sail, use the grappling hook to dredge out treasure from the bottom of the ocean, or bust out a cannon with bombs and blow foes away. Last but not least, you can pick up weapons monsters drop. They are strong, but heavy and slow, very similar to the Skull Hammer. Link can't swing them very fast, but I find that throwing them at foes works a lot better. Yeah, I'm that kind of person. It's a useful tactic for sure, though, getting one enemy to separate from the herd and then taking them down. Here, piggy piggy. Regardless, I honestly feel this is excellent gameplay. The moves you can pull off, the attention to detail, everything here checks out. Now for the rough seas of this review. Look, the dungeons mostly feel natural, and outside of one dungeon, they're pretty good here. Most of the dungeons have a great mix of puzzles and combat, and the boss fights are actually really cool. Sure, Goma looks huge and imposing this time around, but he's still the first boss and really simple to take down. This Andross-looking robot isn't terribly tough, but looks cool with its fireball machine gun. The bosses look amazing, but they are fair. They aren't super easy, but they're challenging enough just like any other Zelda boss fight. The balance is really good. Now for the negative. One dungeon is a bit annoying. It has a lot of wind puzzles and needs the iron boots a lot, which thankfully are an item from the get-go this time around, but it can still be kind of annoying. You also need to control your partner a lot in this one too. Okay. In 2.5 of the dungeons, there's this mechanic where you have to play music to control your partner. In this game, you have to use the already slow Wind Waker to play a 4-note song to control your ally. HD kind of makes it faster by cutting the small cutscene out at the back of the, song. Look, there's a cutscene that plays after you play the song, but in HD, after the initial cutscene when you first play it, it doesn't play again as long as you continually use that song. Nice. Still annoying though when trying to move your partner, and you have to do this a lot with Makar, the little wood guy here. Still nice to have some basic playable characters outside of Link, but how to control them is still the worst. Traveling in the seas is also kind of bad. If you want to go a different direction, you have to stop and play a song to change the wind. Luckily, once again, the HD version has a fix for this too. The Swift Sail is here. After a little side questing, you can get this rather quickly. It changes the wind for you and has to go max speed in the water. So, that's cool. It isn't as fast as it could be, but that's still nice. Here's the main issue. Even at full speed, if you aren't stopping to explore nearby islands for treasure, you're probably not going to like this game regardless. Dragonroot, for example, is east of Windenfell. There's a small paw print island between these islands, as well as a few pirate platforms. Yeah, try saying that 5 times fast. Jeez Louise. If you don't stop at these locations, going through the sea may feel a bit drawn out. You are meant to stop here. If you don't, you may regret it. This gets worse the longer the distance between islands. I know they are optional, but the game is built with the idea of exploring these areas. If you're the type to do side quests after the main game, then you probably won't be very happy. Also, see these fish people? Talk to them often. Not only do they fill out your world map, they are also the keys to beating the game on your first run. Unless, of course, you just have a guide. After killing the bird who stole your sister, you end up at a roadblock. You can visit some temples marked on your map to figure out what happened with the Master Sword, but you can't get into them. Oops. If you don't talk to the fish guy, you don't know that there is an island that holds the key to this. Almost like a mandatory side quest. Get to the island and you can't enter that either. Oops, wow. Talk to the nearby fish guy again, and you'll be directed to another island. Get to this island, and once more, you can't get in. See the tedium? Finally, this fish talks about riding the winds to get to this island. However, you may not understand this hint. If you haven't seen this red frog in a tornado near an island, you won't know to go to him. You have to hit him with arrows. Now he teaches you a song to fast travel, and once you can fast travel into the island, you can get the fire and ice arrows. Head back to the fire or ice island to get the needed item, and now you can enter one of the 2 dungeons. What the hell? After beating those dungeons, you need to side quest again to find the Triforce. Yep, a bunch of side quest type material to span out the full game. I get the game was rushed, and it would probably have been better if it got all the time it needed to be made. But this is what I have now. I will give a nod to the HD version again. Getting Triforce pieces is much easier. It used to be every Triforce piece was buried in the ocean. This isn't too bad of a setup, but the Triforce charts were special charts you have to get translated by Tingle. For about 400 rupees. Yeah, that's a lot of in-game money, isn't it? Since there are 8 pieces, that's a ton of money you have to collect. Hope you've been doing a lot of side quests and expanding your wallet. However, in the remake, most of the time you just end up finding Triforce pieces instead of a chart. But there's still a few, it's just a lot better. Still, this isn't even a great setup to begin with. Good dungeons and enemy designs as well as good boss fights, but man, there's just too many issues to ignore here. Sorry, I felt like I had to remind you that we were in level design. See, the actual secrets you can tackle that are optional are fun. Mostly busy work, but you can find treasure charts which show you a treasure that you can dredge up from the sea. These are easy to locate if you fill out your overworld map. You can also tackle island puzzles and challenges as well as a few minigames for more rewards. Money or pieces of heart are the big collectibles here, as well as the charts that I mentioned earlier. Even treasure charts will reward you with finding one of these 2 items normally. Other things you can find out in the sea are giant octopuses, or giant squids, I suppose. These giant squid-looking enemies look scary, and if you happen to drive your boat past a group of seagulls, beware. Killing them is easy enough, however, especially if you have the boomerang. They reward you with a bunch of things: money, piece of heart, magical upgrade. Very nice. You can also do small combat challenges in the form of submarines. One of these will give you a bottle. Nice. Since combat is super fun in this game, I don't mind these. Pirate platforms are also nice little combat challenges that often give you a bit of treasure, which is cool. Reef Islands have cannons to blow up for treasure and maps to secrets in the game. There's a trading side quest that doesn't upgrade your sword, but will get you a piece of heart and special armor in case things get dicey for you. Nice! You can also take on this combat challenge and outset your home island too. You can get a Triforce piece here halfway through, as well as a mask if you beat the whole thing, allowing you to see enemy health bars. Neat. You can do some work for this teacher, gaining a piece of heart, and after that, you can actually sell her joy pendants for a private oasis house. Cool. Explore this house and you can find a secret basement with a Triforce piece. Oh shit, this was mandatory. You know, it's hard to tell sometimes. You have an auction minigame where you can spend money and get treasure through outbidding other people, as well as a couple other games on Windfell and a few other islands. And last, but not least, you can do a side quest involving a camera. Do enough and you get a camera that takes colored pictures. Take enough of these and you get figurines made of nearly every character model in the game, including boss fights. Awesome! There isn't much a reward for this, but viewing them is kind of nice. Something for everything. I'm sure the rewards aren't super original, there's a few helpful items, but mostly money and heart pieces. That isn't bad, however, and most of the side quests are fun to come across, so that kind of makes up for it. In closing, the game does seem really good. Great story, world building and characters, fantastic music and stylized art style, allowing for great expressions. Gameplay is one of the best for 3D Zelda games in my opinion. So far, anyway. And secrets are satisfying and useful, although it is busy work to build health and rupee count. The worst part is the level design. None of the islands and dungeons are all that bad. In fact, most of them are really good. It's just the setup that's problematic, as well as the Great Sea, that is the biggest issue, and it's the biggest part of the game, unfortunately. With all that, I think I'll give the game an 8 out of 10. The game is great, and I do highly recommend it. Especially if you go after side quests while playing the main game. But with that said, I think I've ranted long enough. The next Zelda game that I'll be taking on will be a direct sequel to Wind Waker, The Phantom Hourglass. I haven't honestly played Phantom Hourglass until now, so this should be interesting. But this won't be my next review. Until next time, my minions, take care. My throat dried out. Okay, bye!